welcome to Quest Me. I always mess that up and forget to take the overlay off, but here I am. Again, welcome to Quest Me, the Star Wars podcast that takes you on a quest through legends and new canon. My name is Josh, and I'm your forever host, friend, and, again, night trooper, because I'm sticking with that forever. You can follow Quest Me anywhere on the socials by searching for Quest Me Podcast. Today we are talking about Ahsoka, the season finale, episode 8, The Jedi, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But before we get into that, I have so many people to introduce, so we're going to kind of go quick here. Here we are. Justin is here. Phil is here. We got our good friend Steve and the original quester, Mr. Jesse Bailey. How are you doing? Let's go around the table, starting with Jesse.
Oh, man. Let's see. This is difficult to vocalize, but I'm excited to be here because I have a bone to pick with Ahsoka.
Oh, no.
Of course you do.
Justin, how are you doing, sir?
I'm wonderful. I'm really excited. Happy Jesse's here. And
You're
Steve.
leaning back in your chair, all like, here I am, just cool. I'm just a cool
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Speaking of cool guys, Steve, how are you doing, sir?
I'm just happy to be on the show, man.
You look happy to be on the show. You look like maybe you've been having a happy time tonight.
Oh no, it hasn't started. I haven't started that yet. I was just imitating.
Oh, okay.
I was imitating Sam Rockwell from Galaxy Quest.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm just excited to be on the show, man.
I messed that up. Well, we're excited to have you, and of course, Phil, you are back. I think this is the most consecutive shows you have ever been on. I am proud of you. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's been a good week. Got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I hear that. Like, in the biggest way, I hear that for sure. Thank you all for being here for this ridiculous roundtable of sorts, where we talk about, I would say, my top 3 favorite Star Wars Disney Plus show. We had a thing on Twitters that went around, and it's definitely in the top 3. But I'm so excited to just get on with it and get this show on the road. But before we get to any of that, of course, I have to have Jesse let us know what you've been up to and where people can find your wonderful podcast.
Oh, wow. Well, happy to explain that I have mostly been spending time at Open Pike Night. You can follow that show on basically any social media channel. I know social media is a fraught landscape these days, but at Open Pike is our tag basically everywhere. And Open Pike Night is the Strange New Worlds podcast where your personal logs are the prime directive. We are a call-in show, and we encourage people to call in so that they can talk directly to the actors and the crew that make Star Trek Strange New Worlds. People like Melissa Navia, Celia Rose Gooding, Anson Mount, costume designer Bernadette Croft, writers like Bill Wolkoff and Davey Perez. We kind of just, some friends and I from the Green Shirt podcast who watches TNG decided it would be fun to do a Star Trek podcast about a show that hasn't been off the air for 30 years. And of course, I say that while we're in the middle of potentially the longest Star Trek cliffhanger ever. Season 2 of Strange New Worlds ended on a cliffhanger, and there are, I think we're down to 1 Hollywood strike now for just SAG-AFTRA.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't know when season 3 is going to happen. So we've been really trying to fill that time with more interviews with the people that are able to talk about the show. We've got some bonus Patreon coverage of Lower Decks season 4 right now. We're having a lot of fun with that. But yeah, if you're into Strange New Worlds at all, definitely check out Open Pike Night because it's the easiest way for you to talk to the people that make the show without going to a convention and standing in a line and being given like 30 seconds to put something together.
Now we know what it feels like, what those people felt like in the interim between Best of Both Worlds.
I gotta say, I feel a little bad because at the end of season 1, I was like, man, I kind of wish they would have done a cliffhanger so that we could feel what it felt like back in the day.
You
Now
fool!
Now they did, and it's an indeterminate amount of time to wait. So I'm like, oh, maybe I brought this on the world. So My apologies, but it wasn't me. It was the AMPTP and their greedy, grubby hands.
Yeah, amen
There's
to that.
such a great way to end a show, though. The anticipation and that build-up. Ooh, I love it.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm only on episode 1. Actually, I went back and watched the last half of Strange New Worlds season 1 so I could be up to date, because it's been a while since I finished that series, so I needed to get back up to speed. But
It's a good call. I honestly, like, when you asked me to be on this episode for Ahsoka, I was like, this is good. This will give me something else to watch because my show's not on right now. And I mean, I will just say that you know that I go into every show that I watch with an open mind. I would rather be pleased than not. So just let that color all of my comments going forward.
yeah,
Jesse.
I think Ro is here, and he's definitely ready. He's already he's saying he's not going to stay quiet. Release the hounds. He's got your quest right here. Yeah, so it's good to have you back, Jesse. I'm super excited to do another podcast with you. It's been a while, so
It has.
Some,
I think the last time we did an episode, you were on Open Pike Night.
yeah, yep, yeah. That was.
Are we not here to talk about Firefly? I'm confused.
So,
No, we're on Battlestar Galactica.
That's
Oh
that's
my
the end of the
God.
year.
But on the topic of Steve and Firefly, what have you
Excellent
been up
segue,
to,
Phil.
And where can people find you, sir?
Well, it hasn't been made yet, but I'm working on getting my own podcast off the ground, as I mentioned on episode 5, and we're balls to the wall on that now that I'm back from my trip, and my friend and I are getting that together. I'm coming up with a whole bunch of segments and also prizes for probably our
Prizes.
1 or 2 or 3 listeners, probably the 4 guys right here, and whoever else wants to
I'll
join
be
in.
there.
But yeah,
You're doing Battlestar Galactica, right? Aren't you
yeah,
doing like
Battlestar Galactica 20-year anniversary, and
Yeah.
I'm hoping. So far, the guests that I have lined up are people that have done a podcast about Battlestar Galactica already. So I'm hoping that I'll get some of the celebrities to join in. The one that I know, Edward James Olmos, has throat cancer, so I don't know how he's going to be willing, how willing he will be to talk for 2 hours. So we'll see what I
Right.
can do on that front. But I'm going to try and drop that first episode on the actual 20th anniversary coming in this December. So stay tuned.
Nice. And of course, we will share that information when it comes out. Justin, what you got?
I'm wondering, Jesse, first question. Did you cram this entire season into like 4 days like you did last time?
2
Come on,
days.
man.
2 days for
2
this
days.
one.
Have you met Jesse? Dude.
Mostly because I feel like a lot of prestige TV now is like every episode has that like almost cliffhanger quality to it, right? Like they always cut to black when you want the next scene. And I think maybe Game of Thrones is really the biggest perpetrator of that. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to experience this whole story at once so that I can keep everything that I feel about it fresh, and, you know, so I can give the whole show a chance, right? Like I don't want to judge the show with the recency bias of having only seen the last episode, right? So I watched all of this on I think Saturday or Sunday, and then I watched Tuesday the last episode when it came out. So it was that one I did watch on release. So I have the whole thing fresh in my head, and I feel like that gave me a better perspective on the story rather than trying to remember what had happened several weeks prior.
That is fair. And then the second one's for Steve. Was it nice to actually meet Josh in person?
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, that's right. You weren't here for all the stories. Yeah, we had
No.
we had a great time.
That was a
there
really fun time. Steve and I hung out
liquor
for-
flowed, and
Yeah, he got me this like bourbon. It was like something that you're supposed to sip on, and I just shot that thing. I was like, "What?" And he was like, "You animal."
which is normally something that I would do, and so to be shown what that looks like, I was like, oh hey, let's get going.
I didn't know. So you can't put a shot in front of me and not expect me to just Take it like a shot.
Well, now I know
Was
that.
it had to determine if it's glass or plastic. If it's plastic, I'm gonna shoot it.
What?
If it's glass,
Yeah.
you sip it.
Yeah.
What was it that we got?
It was bullet.
Oh, okay.
Ooh,
Bullet,
nice.
bullet tenure. Speaking
Yeah,
of which, are we going to a bar far away tonight? Or
I was actually just gonna
Okay.
say we're gonna use that booze. You ruined it,
Segue.
but here we go. That's right. We're going to a bar far away where Phil tells us one of his fancy ass drinks that he likes to make. So tell us what you're drinking tonight, Phil.
Well, it is the season finale for Ahsoka season. So no, we're
Poor
all done.
Steve's
Quest
face.
me's done. no. So it is our season finale. So I figured I'd do a twofer tonight. First up is a classic. I did not actually do any Star Wars themed tweaking for this one. This is just a classic Corpse Reviver number 2. The Corpse Reviver number 2 is yeah.
penicillin.
Oh, I love this thing. It is equal parts gin, Lillet Blanc, triple sec, and lemon juice, with an absinthe rinse for the glass before you pour the cocktail into it. Absolutely phenomenal. Light kind of taste, little tart, little bitter with the absinthe in there, but surprisingly strong for penicillin and dark magic, pretty much.
Good lord, man.
No, it's it's delightful. One of a whole kind of chain of cocktails that were invented for hangover cures. Hence the name Corpse Reviver.
Josh, you saw that video on your computer of me doing the prairie oyster?
Oh yeah. No, we still have that around somewhere from the
throw it
Bebop
up.
recap.
Oh, I'm sure I could find it. Yeah, but I'm not going to right now.
And then the other one. So last summer, I was in a local bartender competition, and I invented a cocktail that I called Burn the Witch. So it's a riff on a whiskey sour, using Axe and the Oak local distillery rye whiskey, Fireball, and an Italian herbal liqueur called Strega. Strega means witch. So Strega, Fireball, Burn the Witch. So for this particular iteration of the Burn the Witch, though, I did a float of Midori on top. So it's got a nice little evil green kind of tint to it. And I call this one a Night Sister.
I like that.
Okay.
You
That's
lost me at the
wonderful.
beginning of that drink, but
Sips.
now I'm back.
Okay.
Well,
I-
lucky for you, the recipe is going to be in the show notes. So.
Oh no,
Yeah,
I think he
with
just
the name.
means being turned off by the idea of Fireball being in there.
Oh.
Uh, and believe me, I had professional bartenders taste it and tell me, "How dare you make me like a drink that has Fireball in it?"
I agree with those bartenders.
So the recipes for both the classic Corpse Reviver number 2, the Burn the Witch, and the Night Sister variation actually are all going to be in the show notes. So enjoy, drink responsibly.
And I am just drinking a regular old Sluggo Cola, the slimiest soda in the galaxy.
I'm
Slurms
drinking Coors
McKenzie
Light,
approved.
and I'm drinking a Coors Light because, again, you can take the boy out of Denver, but you can't take the Denver out of the boy.
If
I
I
I
had
call
Steve's
this-
got some Jameson.
Oh,
Yeah.
so this actually brought this back from Ireland.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is
I was
a-
I was going to say that's not one I've seen locally.
you will not
that's,
find this outside of the actual distillery.
That's spectacular, sir.
So the bottle is going away over there. And
Yeah,
this is-
yeah.
this is-
No,
this
keep
is
that Keep
This is
that
the-
far away so that you don't go through half of it tonight.
This is the 1 ounce that I poured for myself, and that's all I'm going to be having.
Josh, when the glass isn't full, they're called fingers, and that's usually how you tell whether or not you shoot a drink.
Okay. All right.
See, I brought back the bottle of Jameson Distillery Edition, but it doesn't look like that. I have a different one then. But
This
it's
one
the
is
same
called-
thing. You only made it there.
Yeah,
Didn't
this one is
export
called Crested, and it's from the original recipe when they were still making it for only barrels.
Oh,
And so when
I want that.
they switched over to green glass in the early the late 1800s, the recipe changed, and they said, "Hey, let's try and make that original thing, but in bottles again." And it's very, very small
Nice.
batch. So,
Nice.
excuse me.
All right. Well, I'll do
Enjoy,
this
mate.
in justice. I got the DDP VC, Diet Dr Pepper, Cherry Vanilla with Jameson.
Diamond Dallas Page.
Oh
Damn,
my
there's
goodness.
a throwback.
Well, now that Quest Me has turned into a full-on booze podcast, we are going to take that booze and go back to a galaxy far away and talk about Episode 8 of Ahsoka, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, which is a fun take on the Chronicles of Narnia story. If no one caught that, I'm kind of disappointed in you, but I did like that. So, as always, I'm going to do my own little synopsis. This one's a little different because I kind of like go through it. I don't know. We're doing the show a little bit differently. Those of you that have watched Quest Me before or listened to the show, we're gonna do the show a little differently because there's 5 of us here and there's a lot to talk about. So we're gonna have some fun with it. In the season finale of Ahsoka, we get action, we get mysticism, we get witches, Jedi, some good lore, animated references, and everything in between. Ezra gets a new lightsaber, Morgan gets a new sword, and Thrawn gets a new lease on life. We see a new class of stormtroopers and get a better idea of what Balin is looking for. The series might be over, but it seems like the battle is just beginning. This episode was directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Is that? I can never remember how to say it. But of course, it was written by Dave Filoni, and it has all the usual suspects as stars. And I can't praise the music of this series enough. Kevin Kiner did a wonderful job with the score. Just all the different callbacks to pretty much anything. Like there's a scene. It's very brief in the last episode where they're going through the bone graveyard, and they make the same little like 8 bars. They play the same 8 bars of music that they did in Empire Strikes Back when Han Solo was going through the asteroid field, and there's just little callbacks like that throughout the entire score of this that make it, I don't know, just really special to me. And it was a really genius effort on Kevin Kiner's part, so I cannot praise that enough. Like I said, we're doing this a little bit differently. So this week, we're starting with the Tusken Raider, because I want to rate this episode before we even talk about it. I want to get an idea of what everybody's rating is before we even discuss the show. So let's start with Jesse. And for you, actually, because I've asked pretty much all the guests, what do you rate this episode, and then what do you rate the series as a whole? Everyone else just rate the episode, but Jesse, you get to be special this time.
Well, anybody who's heard me on a podcast before knows that I always consider myself special, but I'm just gonna start by saying I have not watched, I'm sorry, is it called Rebels?
Yes.
Okay. I have not watched Rebels. Okay. I specifically did not watch it before this because I wanted to know if the series would work without it. And I kind of feel like maybe it doesn't. So just keep that in mind as I give these ratings. I think this show is gorgeous. I loved all of the effects. I really enjoyed all of the fights. I have nitpicks with like the reasons behind some of the fights and the results of some of the fights, but absolute joy to watch. It was easy to get through 7 episodes of this really quickly. I never felt like it was a slog. I was very much like, okay, I'd like to watch the next one now. Overall, I think I would probably give the series a 6 out of 10, and I give this episode probably a 5 out of 10. I know that Ro in the chat, I told you that I had agreed with you on Twitter when you had mentioned it as a 3 out of 10, and that was mostly just to rile up Josh, but I do have serious issues with this last episode as a story for casual fan, right? I think that the answer is that this isn't for me. This is not for the casual fan. This is for the hardcore fan who's been wanting more Ahsoka since since they saw her debut and the whole first part of her story. So that will color a lot of how I ended up feeling about the series and this episode in general.
That makes a lot of sense. And you're not like a diehard Star Wars fan. Like a lot of us are. Like Hugh last week had not seen Rebels or Clone Wars either,
Yeah.
but he still really enjoyed Ahsoka because he knows who Ahsoka is and he likes seeing all those old characters and stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense that someone that hasn't watched Rebels and hasn't watched Clone Wars would kind of have a hard time like getting into, especially the finale, and like seeing all that different lore and those different kind of like surprises, I guess.
We'll get
makes
into
sense.
it.
Yeah.
Like I really appreciate what they were going for. I think Rosario Dawson is an amazing actor. But yeah, we'll get into some of the issues I
Yep.
had. I don't know that there was anything where I was like, well, now I don't understand. It was more of like story specific issues. But like I said, we'll get into that. Somebody else's
Yep.
turn.
Justin, what are you rating this episode?
Episode 8 out of 10.
Okay.
Just the reasons why are like the wonderful fighting, had great choreography, and I really appreciate the different camera angles and views during the Ahsoka and Morgan fight. Visually awesome. Like that's just Star Wars MO. Had good wide shots, especially in this episode. It was, and then it had a few down points just for me. Like I still didn't want to see Sabine use the Force all of a sudden, and then now she's throwing Ezra around. Like that was a little far fetched for me. Thank you, Ricky. And then overall for a season finale, I same thing. It's sort of left on a cliffhanger, or not a cliffhanger, but like a blank slate for at least for Ahsoka's future. But overall, like it lacked a sense of urgency, or urgency, and that creates that guttural drama. Like I didn't feel that they were something bad was going to happen when they were stuck. It was like, oh, okay. But like overall, I mean, I loved it. Like zombies, Star Wars, my two favorite things mashed into one. I'm happy.
Steve, what are you rating this episode?
Well, first off, I usually don't toot my own horn, but I would just like to tell the world, maybe once in a while, be like me, because Jesse was just explaining how much he didn't like the episode, and I just sat there and listened, and I let him make his point. And if we all did that with people we disagree with, we might just be a little happier. So for the first time ever, world, be like me, because I give this a 9.5. Because I am a diehard Rebels fan. I've seen the series multiple times, and I love it. And Kanan Jarrus is my favorite Jedi. And Jesse, you don't even know who that is, and that makes me really sad because he's the best. And maybe one day I'll watch it with you. But there's a reason why I didn't give it a 10, and I'm sure we will get into that as the episode progresses.
All right, Phil, what are you rating this? Are you also changing the ratings in the notes? Because you really just fucked up my math.
Man, if it's that easy to mess with you as we're going through.
You can't do that to me, man.
Spoiler alert, it is.
No, I did revise down. I had originally put this in as a 9.5, but I did drop it back down to a 9. I thought it was a spectacular episode. As somebody who is a fan of Rebels, but not a diehard fan, was honestly kind of turned off by the art style of it at the beginning. and it took some. Honestly, it took realizing that Steve Bloom was in it. That was kind of what won me over. Was seeing one of my favorite voice actors being like a lead role in there. I'm not a diehard Rebels fan. I love Star Wars, and I love some of the ties that we've seen to the old Legends universe. But this is also, as several people have already mentioned, this would have been confusing as fuck to come in without any kind of background. This episode in particular hits some of that deeper lore very hard, especially at the end. So
I want to be clear about something with my criticism. I didn't find anything confusing. I found some stuff kind of disappointing. Like,
Okay.
I feel like I understood most of what was put in front of me, with maybe one or two exceptions of a shot where I was like, oh, that's clearly meant to have gravity, and it just doesn't for me. But most of my nitpicks come from like a purely story perspective.
and that's good. That's fair.
So yes, I will clarify those when it's my turn again. I just don't want people to look at me and go, well, this guy doesn't understand Star Wars, because like, come on, it's Star Wars.
He's just over here rooting for the other team this whole time.
Right.
And no,
Nah.
we are definitely going to get into all of that because, so I'm rating this a 9 because I'm a homer and I love Star Wars. It's definitely not a perfect episode. I think my only perfect episode was back on episode 6, maybe. I don't remember, but that gives us a total of 81, which is very on par for what we have rated Ahsoka throughout the entire series. So what we're going to do today for this, normally we go through the story and talk about everything and whatever, but we're already a half hour into this and we've already done one segment. So what I've done is I have mashed all of our segments into my notes, right? So we're not going to end this with one-chimers and Starlight Killer scene. While we talk about the episode, that's when I'm going to pull up your one-chimers and your Starlight Killer scenes, and we'll talk about not only your shot, but then that scene as a whole. I feel like it's going to help move this show on a little bit quicker than it normally would with 5 people on a season finale of one of our favorite Star Wars shows. So that being said, we're going to play a little game, and it's called Love It or Hate It, and that's how we're going to do this show. So I want to start with the very beginning of the episode, basically, and Morgan's new sword and how she got it. Now, before we all break into it, Justin's one-chimer comes in at this part. So I'm going to play that and let Justin talk about it, talk about this whole scene first. So here we go.
Even I fell victim to the heroics of a single Jedi. Never again.
So yeah, this scene is right before Morgan gets her new sword and her new dig. So tell us why you picked that particular one-chimer, Justin.
And this is coming from a Rebels fan and a lover, but it's Thrawn showing the lesson that he learned from Ezra just for taking him as a teenager back then for granted, and officially learning it. It's really hit Morgan saying, yeah, we're gonna win. This is no doubt. But Thrawn's just nah, let's just wait a little bit in anticipation. And then what do you go ahead and figure with she leaves Morgan behind as a failsafe and asks for a little more time. So it's just him showing his dominance with strategy and just being tactile. But from I can't really understand it from a non-Rebels viewer, but it'd be interesting to hear what Jesse's point of view.
And that's kind of the thing I was going to bring up is like Thrawn was always so cool, calm, and calculated, and he shows that here, and how much that he's learned to be that cool and calm and calculated. But we've all seen that. I mean, us three have read it in the books, and we know a lot about the EU stuff with Thrawn. Jesse, on the other hand, has not seen anything about Thrawn. So are you a believer that he is as good of a warlord as everybody says he is, Jesse?
Yeah, so this is actually a high point of the whole series for me because Thrawn feels like a grown-up. Like he feels like a smart bad guy. He's the bad guy that has learned the lesson that all the other Star Wars bad guys should have probably learned, right? Like, no, you don't just assume that you have everything under control. Yes, you allocate resources to this every time it comes up. You never let this threat go unchallenged. He's calm, he's calculating. I really feel they did a great job of showing why he would be a threat. I feel like I didn't get to see him be a threat. Like they went, here he is, he could potentially be a threat. Now we've put him in a place, i.e. the home galaxy, where he can be a threat, but the show is over. So like now here's another part of this. I didn't know that this was going to be a multi-season show. Like I kind of had I figured it would be a one-season show, and if it is going to be a multi-season show, I would personally like to know that ahead of time, because that gives you a little more room for forgiveness for this style of cliffhanger. But I will also say, like, a cliffhanger at the end of a season should still wrap up the main story of the first season before teasing you about the second season. And while I understand that this story of finding Ezra and getting him back were wrapped up, the show is actually called Ahsoka and not Ezra. So that's a complaint that I have. Also, I found myself falling in love with Sabine and really wish we got more of her and that the show had maybe been called Sabine. Because if I was under the impression that this was about Sabine, I think I would be a lot more forgiving with my ratings, because it's her story and it's about her feelings and what she wants. And I like that. I think that actor did a great job. But it's weird because I feel like the series ended up in a place where it traded in its title character for some guy that I've basically never heard of, and it stranded Sabine and Ahsoka in a place where I'm like, could we have had flashbacks to her training instead of Anakin training Ahsoka? Like, I don't need to see that. I get it. Anakin should be a powerful enough name in the Star Wars universe to where you don't need to actually physically put him on screen and show him teaching a lesson, in my opinion. So
Interesting.
Part of me is like, why did they cliffhang this? Because I didn't know there was going to be a second season, which I now assume there will be. But the other part of me is like, why is this show called Ahsoka if it's mostly not about her? I don't feel like I know Ahsoka any better in episode 8 than I did in episode 1, which is she's a badass warrior who doesn't take shit and she always gets the job done. But I don't know anything about what she feels or thinks or cares about basically at all, other than try to help the people around her, which is a Jedi thing to do, right? So
Yeah. I agree with you that you saw a lot more character development for Sabine than you did in Ahsoka throughout this entire series. The best part of the development was with her and Anakin, when she went from Ahsoka the Gray to Ahsoka the White. That was like the biggest piece of development we got from her. Justin, you had something that you wanted to say?
Oh no! Jesse justified it within his speech.
Okay, all right, all right.
well, and
yeah,
and Josh, you know how I am about Star Wars going, here's a weapon that's not a lightsaber that can fight a lightsaber. Like,
yeah.
every Star Wars does it, and I'm okay with it. I think they did a cool job this time. I liked it just being a straight up flaming samurai sword. That was cool.
Yeah.
But like, why can't this witch just have a lightsaber? Like,
That being
have her use a
said,
lightsaber.
Steve, what did you think about seeing the Talzin sword come back in? Because that was like an ancient Night Sister sword that we know about from Clone Wars and Rebels.
I have to admit that I had forgotten what it was because I don't remember that. But I when it popped up, I'm like, okay, that has to be something that we're supposed to know. Now, yeah, that's the other thing. I've dabbled in Clone Wars, especially in the last season and like its later seasons. But if that's from any time before season 4, I'm not terribly familiar with it. I pretty
And
much
it was.
I did the mall stuff. And
So
then
it
when
actually
picked up,
it actually does connect to the mall stuff.
Mhm.
Talzin
Well,
Talzin herself was Darth Maul's mother and one of the Night Sisters on Dathomir.
She was the mothers that we see in this show was basically her. Like she was the leader of that Dathomir population, I believe.
speaking of the mothers in the show, Claudia Black, if you're listening, you can get it.
Going back, so I do want to say hi to everyone in the chat. By the way, we have Ro and we have us and we have and Ricky and B Serbin. Who do we know who that is?
Me.
B. Oh, it's just,
It's
just all of us. It's just all of us. This is wonderful. But Ro does say, Thrawn, we need more time to escape. Also, Thrawn, flying the Star Destroyer real slow to have them catch up to us. Shake my head.
I mean, it's a big ship. It's gonna move slow in the atmosphere, man. Like, none of my nitpicks for this were like, Trekkie detail style stuff. Like, it's a show about space magic. I don't care. Like, if the reason for a thing is space magic, that's good enough for me. Like, I'm fine with that. So like, I see the sword and I'm like, oh, it's a magical space sword. Good enough, because guess what? All the Jedi characters have magical space swords. Like, I really am willing to forgive a lot. There are too many instances where this show either tries to turn to the side and wink and go like, haha, remember that? And as a new watcher, I'm like, no, I don't. But I feel like they hamstrung themselves by giving me Ahsoka flashbacks, because it's like, now I don't feel like I need to go watch Rebels. I know what happens in Rebels. Anakin struggles to train Ahsoka. Like, you know what I mean? Like, most of my complaints come from the actual narrative itself and not from like the little world building details. Like, I like the world building that they did. And I think my favorite episode is, it might have been the first episode where Ahsoka's in the temple unlocking everything, like
Tomb Raider style.
That was, I mean, that was
Yeah.
a straight video game, and I was fine with that. Like, I'm like, this is fun to watch. I like the way she fights. She's doing cool stuff. And then the pacing just died after that for the most part. Like, there were still things and narrative threads that I couldn't wait to get the next part of. But I think on the whole, there wasn't enough for a casual fan. And I'm not saying that you should write your show for casual fans, but I do think you should make your show, like, consider that this might be somebody's entry point into these characters and treat it, that way at least.
Right. And I think that's a good comment, because I think this show was made more for hardcore fans. I think it was absolutely more of like, here you go, guys, this is what's going on. But people that watch Mandalorian can probably pop in and be like, oh, this is that Thrawn guy they're talking about, cool, and not really care about the past stuff. But because, Thrawn's going to be in Mando season 4, or he's going to be a prominent character, I would assume. So they got to still kind of explain how he comes back, which they did. I don't want to. At least they didn't do Book of Boba Fett, where it was Mandalorian season 2.5. You know what I mean? They still kind of kept this on its own and kept it its own series, as a way to introduce the quote-unquote big bad of the Mandoverse, which I say quote-unquote because I think that's going to change later on, but we'll get there later. Steve, what did you have?
I was going to comment on the fact, like, why they maybe called it Ahsoka instead of something else. And it just seems like she is, this season, she's the one in the driver's seat. Whereas in Rebels, she's really only in season 2. Spoiler alert.
True.
She's a presence in season 1. She's in season 2, and then she goes on her own journey. And pretty much, I would say Ezra is the driving force of the entire series, and then everyone else kind of gets either an arc every episode or an arc every few. It's like Sabine has the driver's seat for most of season 4, and Kanan and Hera have a driver's seat for a lot of it, but for the most part, Ahsoka was not the driving force of Rebels. So this is the continuation of that series, but giving her. And in season 2, she wasn't. In season 2, she wasn't the driving force anyway. She was a presence.
So this is more of a continuation of Clone Wars, to be honest with you. Like, you can basically watch Clone Wars, watch those few episodes on Rebels with Ahsoka, and then come right here and be caught up just fine.
Anakin is not in Rebels.
No, not even. I mean, Anakin isn't. But
Anakin's
anyway, let's go on to the. We talked a little bit about the sword being in action. I thought it was really cool to see the Talzin sword actually fighting against Ahsoka, and like Diana Lee and Osanto is a G. Like, she kills it, and you really see that she's Bruce Lee's goddaughter, and that she is trained in the martial arts for a long time in this episode. I believe that she did all of her own sword fighting with Ahsoka.
And it's a really nice throwback to that Mando season 2 fight with her with the Beskar spear.
Yep.
So
it was it was a good final battle,
Are you kidding me? Like, that the shooting of the scene was beautiful. The choreography was on point. Like, you really couldn't tell that it was fake. And most of that could have been one-sided because one is a trained martial artist and the other one is an actor. But I felt the opposite. The whole time I was looking at Morgan, so the scene felt real. I did not focus watching Ahsoka yet.
This is a complaint that I have with the entire show. I feel like anytime we got a wide shot of Ahsoka fighting with a lightsaber, it was very clearly not Rosario Dawson, because when they would cut back to the close-up, I do not like to criticize actors' performances in any way. I really don't. But I didn't feel the physicality from her. Like, there was no weight to the movements that she was making. And I understand it's a sword made of light. But, I don't know. There was no strain. Like, there was no... I didn't see effort on her face.
Because she's not a Jedi master.
Not the same weight to it like you would see with, any of Balin's... fight scenes where his saber, he definitely had more of the episode, like the episode 4, hey, these things are heavy, they're awkward kind of feel to it. I can see that. I got you.
Jesse, now have you seen, I know you've seen anime, right?
Oh, yeah.
What about Samurai Champloo?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, one of the characters is a Ronin and a samurai.
Yeah.
And they're stoic the whole time, even while fighting. Can you use that comparison? Maybe.
I feel that, but if your main character isn't emoting while they're in high stakes situations, it decreases my investment in the show. Like in Samurai Champloo, the Ronin is part of an ensemble, right? And this is Luke Skywalker taking on the big bad by himself, to save everybody in the show. So, feeling needs to be there regardless of the character, ability level, in my opinion. And obviously, I am not a writer. I am not an actor. I am just telling you how it struck me in the moment, which was, there was something about it that felt too clean and not... I don't want to say realistic, because I get that that's a dumb thing. That's a stupid bar to try to hold a show like this to. It didn't work for me personally. But I do agree that fight was great, and I had a complaint when she lost her little lightsaber, because I was like, that should matter. Like, that should be a momentous moment. And then 4 seconds later, she's got a second sword again, which I understand, and it looks cool, but I was like, Maybe she should have lost that little lightsaber in the last episode, and then this is where she gets her replacement. I understand these are nitpicky things, but they are true to my experience of the show.
I am so happy that you brought up that Ahsoka had two swords, because that's actually my Sarlacc killer scene at the 31-minute mark, when Ahsoka just cuts up Morgan with her sword and Ahsoka's lightsaber. I thought that was an extremely cool way for Morgan to go out, and a really good callback to Tales of the Jedi, when Ahsoka actually stops the Inquisitor with her bare hands and then takes his lightsaber away from him and cuts his head off with it. So really cool callback, and I loved that whole I'm going to take your sword and kill you with your own weapon thing.
And actually, to Rose's point in the chat, like, some of the prosthetics in this, I couldn't hang, and I apologize for that. Like, coming from a Star Trek background, like, I get that prosthetics are not always gonna work, but like every time Ahsoka would cross her arms, I was like, does that hurt to have her head tails in her armpits? Like, because they couldn't get away from it, and then like, I fully understand that there's a bit of charm to go with practical effects, but like the wiggling on the end of the tails for her and Hera really distracted me. I don't know if that's a fair thing to hold against the show, but it is true. It made me be like, I wonder what it's like to wear that on set, and like, I wonder how it feels. It brought me out of the story because I started thinking about the actor instead of the character.
I would say that's fair, because my girlfriend did the same thing. She's like, is that a real like wig thing? And I was like, oh yeah.
I actually haven't considered that this entire time. So
yeah.
Well, good for you.
No, but that's my point. Is like, it's probably down to the viewer, right? Like, and I would believe that there are viewers that are like, no, I'm glad that it's practical, because that's how classic Star Wars is. I don't want CG effects on my character's face. And that's perfectly valid. I just. There was a couple times where I was like, maybe they could have shortened those, or like, just changed where they fall on her vest. It's not a big problem, but it's a thing.
I'm surprised they didn't do a Deadpool thing where, like, Ryan Reynolds has like 6 different kinds of masks to wear. Like, there's one mask that he wears that is completely translucent to him, like his whole like, he can see out of the whole thing for fight scenes. Yeah. And from far away, it's like it just looks like the regular mask. If you get close, you can see it's like, sunglasses that are, what do you call those?
Right.
The ones you can't see through from the outside.
Mirrored.
Like, is that it? Or whatever. But yeah, so that's I'm surprised I'm surprised they didn't have something like that for her headdress. It was like, oh, here's your stunt headdress where it will move a little more freely.
Right.
Like a piece of your body would.
And they might have done. We just haven't gotten to see that much behind the scenes stuff on this yet. So,
well, based on what Jesse's saying, it seems like they didn't, because it's still hindering her movements while she's fighting. So,
which I could see it, because there's a lot of times in this whole series where there's fight scenes, and I'm like, I don't know if I believe Ahsoka is like really fighting it. It seems like it was very choreographed, where you could see the steps. You could see the 1, 2, 3, swing, 2, 4, swing, back, spin, twist, spin, 3, 5, like you could just kind of feel it. And maybe that's the marching band in me, where
roll step, Josh, roll step.
You know what I'm talking about.
There were a couple of moments in the whole series where I honestly, I felt like I was looking at actors on a set in front of a green screen. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
There were moments in the fights where I was like, this doesn't feel authentic. Like,
right.
And again, I don't mean to level that at all of Star Wars, because like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan's fight in episode 1, you're like, obviously none of this is real, but they're really selling it. Yeah. And I feel like there were a few fights in this series that just didn't get sold. And I'm okay with that. I feel like it's only fair to bring it up. I don't know the reason behind it, obviously, because I wasn't there.
No, and it makes sense, because I'm right there with you. But on the topic of selling things, Steve, you get to be the spotlight now because the next scene is all about Ezra and Hu Yang and building a lightsaber. So we're gonna start with your Starlight Killer scene, which came in at the 9-minute and 18-second mark, and it was Ezra igniting his lightsaber, which was, for me, one of the most emotional scenes because I watched Rebels, because I love Kanan, because I loved the relationship that Ezra and Kanan had. It was incredibly emotional to see him get that piece of the lightsaber that was the exact same as Kanan's and then light it up, and it's blue just like Kanan's, and like, you know, Hu Yang giving him props as in like, you must have been a good student, and just that whole scene was a very emotional scene. And I can't get enough. Ezra, the guy that plays Ezra, did a fantastic job. He sold me on Ezra hard. Like by the end of this, I was like, that is Ezra. Like, he could be the voice actor, and I would be completely okay with it. Like, he was really good. It was like he studied Rebels and studied Ezra and his vernacular and his movements.
Amen.
'Cause he was great.
And thankfully, they didn't go with someone's like, oh, we need someone that looks just like the character from the anime. Because damn, Iman is a handsome man.
He is. He's a handsome devil.
I'm totally here for it. So I chose this scene because I mean it was just beautiful. Justin, I'm really glad you were wrong. From a previous episode where you thought if he picked up his lightsaber it would bleed because he's using the
that
dark
was me.
side.
That was
am
me.
I really? What
Yeah.
Justin said something else.
It was
I
me.
apologize.
No,
He
I
said something
and I
else
didn't-
ridiculous.
I'm
I
really
just,
happy
like-
that was not the case.
Yeah, I agree.
Me
And-
too.
It was just
and
a
then, of
thought.
course-
I wasn't like making that prediction. I was just like, maybe that's one of the reasons is because he's using more dark side and it would do something to the crystal. But
Those are definitely stormtrooper dog tags that he's wearing his chainmail, though. I
For
paused
sure.
and zoomed in. But yeah, seeing that scene really, that was like my single man tier moment because I'm like, all right, that's probably as close as we're gonna get to seeing Kanan, and just the fact that it's his lightsaber, and that just made me really happy. And of course, you know, it also kind of gives that vibe of Obi-Wan using Qui-Gon's lightsaber to finish Maul, where it's like he passed it on. It always bugged me in Attack of the Clones that he was not still using Qui-Gon's green blade, like he moved back to a blue one. I'm sure there's a lore reason for that, but I like the fact that Ezra has now kind of taken up. He's not Sabine's master, but he's progressed to the next level by having Kanan's blade.
And is he gonna be Sabine's master or is he gonna be Jason's master?
Probably Jason's master.
Yeah.
Like,
So
because he hasn't even met Jason yet.
So Scarif, Rose says we had a discussion on today's audio drop. Kanan's name in the temple was not Kanan Jarrus. He changed his name from Caleb Doom. How did Hu Yang recognize the name? And Phil responded with, pretty sure he and Ahsoka would have talked about him. I would also agree with that. But at the same time, Hu Yang remembers every single lightsaber made. And so when Ezra found that piece, he would have recognized that was the piece that Caleb Doom had used before.
And
So-
Hugh Yang straight up said Caleb, like he knew exactly who he was.
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. Like, he didn't call him by his fake name. He called him by the name that he knew. Like he knows what's up.
Right, and Hu Yang, by the way, is just the best in this entire series. Like,
He really is.
I really liked him. He's essentially a Vulcan in Star Wars. So I was totally here for that character. I was like, he name drops capital L logic at least a couple of times throughout the series. So I was like, I'm here for this guy. I like that he's snarky. I like that it's a droid with an attitude. Like, I like that he has some of his own capabilities and that he's useful in a lot of ways. Like, and that he has, like I said, he has a personality. Like, I don't know if he's programmed to have feelings, but he seems to be programmed to emulate feelings. And I really like that because it gives me, one more connection to Star Trek. He's kind of like a Data, and he gets it, and he understands that, humanoids are gonna be running on emotion, and if you're training Jedi, especially young Jedi, you're gonna need to be able to deal with that. So I really liked that character a lot.
Steve?
I got one more little caveat, anecdote with this scene is that I think not the whole reason that Hu Yang is in the series, but it gives us a logic as to why Ezra is able to do this. Like how he wouldn't have his own a new lightsaber in this other world, and he clearly
Right.
didn't. And then he, in the galaxy further and further away, he came and Hu Yang is there. Like, oh, cool, I can rebuild my lightsaber instead of just taking mine back. It also, to me, it answered a little question that I've always had, was that where did Luke get his green blade? Because I don't think he went to Hu Yang. He didn't know
In
who
a
Hu Yang
deleted
was.
scene of Return of the Jedi.
Yes, but you see him like fire it up. But my theory that I just came up with this today was that when he went back to Tatooine to free Han, he went to Obi-Wan's hut and started looking around just for inspiration. He was looking for Obi-Wan's maybe Force Ghost and whatnot, and he found Qui-Gon's blade.
I believe
And
there
then
is a
built it from that.
story. I believe there's a story in canon that goes through. I don't know
I don't know
exactly
it.
where it is, but I'm pretty sure that there is an explanation for how Luke did it, and it does have something to do with Obi-Wan. I think it's more that he found books in Obi-Wan's hut that helped him build the lightsaber.
I could see
I'm
that
not
too, like,
positive.
if
I
he
can
went on
see
a
Phil
quest.
over there already fact checking me. So, what you got, Phil?
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, the only reason it changed was because it was easier for them to do the effects on it when they were like out doing the desert
Yeah.
sequences.
Okay. All right. Fine. That's fine.
That's
Whatever.
literally the only reason that they had his new blade be green instead, was because it was easier to see against the desert backdrop when they were filming in Tunisia.
And then in 1999,
This
it's,
guy.
hey,
This
Yeah.
guy just ruining it all.
Yeah, Rose throwing the same thing into chat.
You
But
guys.
but if you want something thematically, they have tied green blades to uncertainty and kind of questioning the path forward of the user, and blue blades to characters who are much more kind of established and kind of ongoing
Dogmatic.
with the traditions and things, and pretty set with everything.
And
Interesting.
I'll just mention, Ro in the chat said Star Wars does droids pretty well. I think that's actually why I like Hu Yang, because I mostly disagree with that statement. Like, I feel like Hu Yang is one of the instances where they did do really well. And like Chopper, I don't need that. Like you,
Oh,
He
see,
is-
that's where you gotta watch
boo
Rebels,
this
my
man.
dude.
Boo.
he is a straight joke character. Like, you can tell what he's saying because it's just a guy talking that they digitize, right? And it's like he's got all the same inflections as a person, but it's a droid. Like,
Just
I
a
don't
guy.
I don't need that. He's an R2D2 stand-in, and I don't personally need that. But that does lead me.
He's the voice of the writer,
it,
and so
it leads me to a realization that Josh is going to love to hear, which is, as I was thinking about my rating for this, I was like, maybe I really am forgetting who Star Wars is for, and that's why I'm judging it so harshly, right? Because Star Wars is always for kids, and not in like a, only kids like this kind of way, but in a, this needs to be accessible to kids, because that is the essence of Star Wars. So I'm going to still apply some of the same logic, but I do try to lean off of that. See, I don't even know who C-110 is. I did like K2SO, but again, it's because he had a personality and he felt like
Sorry.
he was thinking about things. So I don't care about Chopper, and this series did not make me care about Chopper.
Well, and here's the thing about Chopper is that
it's not C-110. It's I'm trying to.
it's C-110P Chop, but he was such an integral part to Rebels, and like did way more than he did in this show. And like I'm talking like committing war crimes to the highest degree, where you're like, this droid is unhinged, and I love him. Like
R2D2 with a kill count.
Yeah, dude.
He's just
So-
an overall badass with a good personality, but maybe that's coming from a Rebels like fan.
And it's got to be. See, and that's why it's good to have someone that hasn't seen Rebels on here with that perspective.
Watch
because
Rebels.
Chopper, because
You
Chopper
will
for
learn
us,
to love him.
Chopper for us is like one of the best droids ever created. But for someone that's just meeting Chopper, he makes no sense.
So that's like the essence of my, I guess you could call it a complaint, right? Is like the show needs to understand that there will be viewers who have no connection to these characters. And if you don't give me something like definitively meaningful with all of these characters, there are going to be ones that I'm like, don't need that. Like, for me, that includes Ezra. Like, I don't get why they wanted to go get him so bad other than he was gone a long time. Because once he shows up, he's not like a Luke level Jedi master who's going to save the day. He's like, all right. And I feel like Ahsoka is maybe more talented and stronger than he is, which makes sense in a show called Ahsoka. But that makes me wonder why they were so hell-bent on getting him back. Like, you're going to trade a pretty all-right guy that everybody misses for, like, the biggest threat since Vader? That doesn't actually math correctly. So like, there are some serious spots where I was like, why is this happening? And I'm not saying that, there wasn't a reason. I'm saying that as a casual fan, I couldn't see it, and that affected how much I enjoyed the show.
Sure.
As Fast and Furious
makes
would say and quote, family.
Family. Oh my goodness. And Rebels is the biggest. Like Jesse, you and I did, a show about found family, basically. Firefly and Cowboy Bebop. It's all about found family. And Rebels is like the epitome of found family in Star Wars. Like, if there's one show or one series that really embraces that, it's Rebels. And so that's a big reason Ezra is a big deal to fans like us, because we watched 4 seasons of them become as close as they were.
And I'm
Kanan
sure
Jarrus was Malcolm Reynolds with the lightsaber.
And I'm sure that season 2 will finally get the band back together, right? But like, as a fresh narrative to me, all they did was trade their 2 best pieces for an all right piece in a situation where they need only their best pieces. Like, so
Right.
I'm fully ready to see their family get reunited. But like, I feel like if you're going to put that much importance on it at the start of this season, then at the end of the season, there needs to be a moment where we're like, okay, now they can face this threat, because now season 2 is going to be very similar to season 1 in that they're going to need to figure out a way to get between galaxies so that everybody can fight Thrawn. Like,
And that's why there might not even be a season 2 of Ahsoka. Steve, what you got?
Sorry. I'm agreeing to disagree with you, Jesse, because I think, and I'm gonna go again with my favorite Jedi here, and also the wonderful actor that portrays him, is that Freddie Prinze Jr. has stated that the Force is about balance, and I don't think they traded their best pieces for for what you just said. I think, yes, Ezra and Thrawn are now in the main galaxy, and Sabine and Ahsoka are in the galaxy far, far away. But I do believe they are right where they're supposed to be, because there is something on that planet, and I will throw Andor season 2 and Book of Boba Fett season 2, if there is one, and Mandalorian season 4 on the funeral pyre if I get Ahsoka season 2 like next year promptly, so I can find out what the frack is going on.
But actually, and that's totally fair. But that actually brings up another complaint that I have. We know that Ahsoka and Sabine are right where they're supposed to be, because Ahsoka just says that to the camera. And she says, it's time to move on. And I'm like, your character in your story is telling me narrative beats? Like, come on, man. Like, I get it. Again, I totally get it. But like, that, to me, that smacks of Ahsoka looking at the camera and going, be satisfied with this finale. And I'm like, well, no, I'm not gonna. Like, if you're gonna tell me that I should be okay with this, then I'm gonna wonder why. And I really am not invested enough to be this animated about it, but I want you to know that I'm not like doing this to be a jerk. Like, I'm doing it because it honestly put me in the headspace of like, what is happening now? And like, why have characters say like, don't worry, it's the last episode, but there's more story. Like, show me that, man. Don't actually tell me that in plain English.
Rose seems to agree with you on that. Justin, what you got?
You didn't get the feeling that Ahsoka was, or Rosario is just playing Ahsoka as just the samurai Ronin, true Jedi, just shrugging everything off and just like, all right, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Like a Zen kind of thought. Well, let's go on to the next point. Like, this is the one thing we can control.
I hear you, and I think that's probably valid, but like, I didn't get that vibe from Ahsoka. The vibe I got from Ahsoka was, I need to atone for mistakes that I made. And then at the end of that, to be like, hey, I'm fine, relax, is kind of like disrespectful to all the other characters' feelings. Like, Sabine spent this whole time wanting to see Ezra again. And then she gets to, and then Ezra gets taken away, and Ahsoka's like, dude, it's fine. Like, we still got to train you. Like, don't worry about it. And it's like, that doesn't sit well with me. And I think it repeats some mistakes that Jedi Masters have made in the past with their apprentices and telling them like, hey, stop living in your feelings. Like, you can say that as many times as you want, but until that character learns to do that, it's not a good strategy, in my opinion. Again, this is my opinion. And you're right, Ricky. I'm going to get this award. Like, and I think I will earn it, because at the end of this, there'll be one thing that I say where they're like, man, you made some good points, but then you said this, and now I hate you.
I'm gonna actually like just drop over into like Tinkercad and start like crafting a little like worst guest ever like award that I can 3D print when I'm at work. It's gonna be
I will
great.
gladly accept it.
It's gonna be great.
Oh my goodness. Well, we've spent a lot of
Podcasting mic is on
time.
fire.
We've spent a lot of time on this first part of this episode, which is fine because we have talked about a couple other things like at the end of the episode. But I really wanted to talk about Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship, which came. Oh, you know what though? Before we go there, Steve, your one-chimer was right at this scene that we started that argument on. So I'm going to play that real quick, and then we'll move on to Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship.
Who taught you how to build a lightsaber anyway?
Kanan Jarrus.
Is that so?
Yeah. He was my master. Taught me everything I know.
And I taught him how to build a lightsaber.
What?
Of course. Now it all makes sense.
That kind of brings up the question again, because Sabine only said Kanan Jarrus and not Caleb Doom, and he knew exactly who it was. But that also, like Phil said, they had to have had a conversation about the name change eventually. So,
Plus, I mean, Hu Yang's got to have, you know, almost a myriad of years of, you know,
Memory and information.
memory that he's been doing this for forever.
Furthermore, in the beginning of that scene, when the two of them are bouncing off each other in that little room, that is my wife and I in the kitchen, and that is constantly why I tell her that the kitchen is not her place in this family; it is mine. Get out.
oh my goodness.
I'm
I'm flipping and reversing it.
My wife can't cook either, so like I don't think Steve is talking shit. I think he's just being like really, really honest with us. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
That's great. And that is one of, again, like I said earlier, it's one of my favorite scenes of the whole show because it does bring out a lot of Rebels emotion and a lot of that kind of nostalgia from just Ezra saying he was my master. That's an Ahsoka reference from when Ahsoka's telling Ezra about Anakin and Darth Vader, because she at one point goes, he was my master. So there's all sorts of references in these shows, or in this series that go back to everything, you know, including the random little animated things. So let's get on to Ahsoka and Sabine's relationship. To me, it's hard to explain because at first, like at the end of Rebels, Ahsoka's taking her on to train. And then in Ahsoka, you start out with they have this skewed relationship where they don't really talk anymore and like they broke up or whatever. And Sabine just kind of bails on Ahsoka, which at the time you're like, wow, why didn't you just like destroy the map like Ahsoka said? You were really selfish about this, blah, blah, blah. But then Ahsoka kind of comes out in this episode and they have their own little like reconciling period. To me, it seemed a little like there was no stakes there, I guess, in a way. I know Sabine was like, I thought you were dead, blah, blah, blah. But Sabine wasn't really tore up about the whole thing. You know, it was just kind of like, oh, you're alive. Cool. Whatever. So, I don't know. It was just a little bit, by the end of it, I was a little, I guess I wasn't as convinced that those two were the best master and apprentice.
Well, so I think that that's on purpose. I think that, I'll just reiterate, I think Sabine is the best character in this entire show. Natasha Liu Bordizzo does an amazing job at making me care about Sabine, who's a character that I have never met before this show. And I kind of wish the show was called Sabine and we had a little more insight into her. But she functions perfectly as the untrained Jedi apprentice, right? Like she's in her feelings. She does things for personal reasons. She feels realistic and human and three-dimensional to me in a way that maybe none of the other characters in this show do. They all feel like they're there to serve a function, whereas she feels like there's a story happening to her, and she's attempting to influence that story in any way that she can. And, you know, to make that hard choice of, yes, this is probably considered the bad way to get to the other galaxy, it's like, it's very human of her to go, but this is my only shot, and I think my master is dead, so, like, what do I have to lose? If the only goal that I have, which it does appear to be the case, is to see Ezra again, then I'm going to do that however I have to do that. And it's a nice, you know, I guess you could call it like a mini betrayal of the Jedi, because she's not she's not willing to like trust in the process, right? She's like, no, I'm going to make things happen. And I think that makes her more compelling than most of the characters in this show because it's more realistic. And she has such an emotive presence. Like she can really, really act. I am excited to see her in more things. And like I said, I'm looking forward to season 2 because I want to see what she does. I have zero issue with her, you know, air quotes, suddenly learning to use the Force really well. I have zero issue with her, like, being more adept at it than some people on the internet seem to think she, air quotes, should be. Because, again, it's space magic, so relax. And I just feel like her character is the one that matters in this show. And I gotta ask you guys, what is Ahsoka, like, the world between worlds, I think is what I saw it called on the internet. What is going on? Like, is it magic water too? Like, what I just
Listen,
is it purely a mental space? Like, I need.
I'm telling you, that all was just a near-death experience dream that she
Jesse,
had, where she was in.
If it helps,
yeah.
If it helps, she was like halfway between like the real world and Stovacor.
Purgatory. But no, I mean,
that's okay, but like, I don't know,
A
man.
lot of
I don't
people
need Anakin. I really don't need Anakin. Like,
well, and here's the thing: is a lot of people think that the world between worlds, like she got transferred there or transported there, and I am fully under the impression that she was dreaming and that she was having a Force vision where she saw Anakin, and that, you know, Anakin would have been the only one to have really come through to her, and so it made the most sense, considering he was her master, to actually have a final training lesson with her. But at the same time, like the Force ghosts can speak to you through dreams, right? So you would assume that even in her Force dream, she's still speaking with the real Anakin. Phil, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that in previous instances where we have seen the world between worlds, there's been an actual portal, a doorway,
Yes.
that characters passed through.
And there was a portal.
we-
You could see it in this, but she
It was not as clear of an entry
Right.
into a interdimensional kind of space that it would have been in the animated series earlier.
On the other
so-
hand, the World Between Worlds is the logo for the show.
That's true.
Right. And
Boom.
like it gave me that feeling of like, oh, this is like a parallel to the map that she found, right? Like this is a world that she's in, like she's physically here. And I'm okay with it. Like I said, space magic does not bother me. But if you don't explain it, it kind of sticks in my craw of like, can you just pick whatever you want? I like your explanation better, Josh, where it's like, no, she's using the Force to keep herself alive, and that's influencing her dreams here. I don't, and not to jump topics again, but I don't like the little kid. I did not need the little kid.
Oh, Jason.
I just didn't need that. Like, and again, I fully get why he's there. I just didn't need it personally for this narrative. So
For someone that
I'm
didn't
not
watch
gonna,
Rebels,
right?
it
And
doesn't
I'm not
make
gonna
any sense.
I'm not gonna hang up on that. I just, as a casual fan, I was like, oh, okay, here's the kid character. Like,
Yep, and I definitely had those thoughts as the show, like when Jason came in, I was like, oh, people are not really going to give two shits about this character. Whereas like me, who loved Kanan and the sacrifice that Kanan made, like Jason is integral. You know, he's huge, and I think he'll play a bigger role in this new Rey series that they're gonna come out with. I do think that the
I
world.
thought that was a movie. Are you telling me we're getting another Disney Plus series?
No, the Rey movie series, because it's not
Okay,
just going to be
thank
one movie.
goodness.
There's going to be more movies. But I think
I
to
want
your
to
point,
see Star Wars in a goddamn movie theater.
yeah, me too.
Sorry, I did love this show, but for fuck's sake, can we go to a theater?
do you
And
remember what happened the last time Star Wars was in the theater, Steve? Because bruh,
Rogue One was amazing. That is
No.
all I have to say.
Is that the last one you watched in the theater? Because
No,
Okay.
I pretend.
he's revising history for his own
Okay.
mental health.
Gotcha,
It's fully
gotcha.
understandable.
and to your point, Steve, the World Between Worlds being in the Ahsoka logo could lead to season 2 and how they have to find the World Between Worlds on Pariah, whatever. Peridia. And they'd have to find it there to get back to the galaxy because there's really no other way they can get there.
I mean,
one more point of interest here. I did enjoy Rise of Skywalker in the theater. It wasn't until I started thinking and watching
Boo
it the
this
second
man.
and third time that I was like, "Oh my god, what did they do to us?" But when I
applied coherent thought, I was like, oh god, no.
when I was feeling THX wash over me inside of the theater, and my brain was just full of serotonin.
Star
It's like-
Destroyers and Lando and all the
Yeah.
different ships and Wedge and you got to see all those cool characters. Then you got home and you thought about it and you were like, what the fuck did I just watch?
It's like getting out of the Marine Corps. They issue you your brains back, and so when I got home, my brain was given back to me. Like, oh, that was probably the worst Star Wars movie I've ever.
Wait a minute. Why did I do that?
Yeah. But you know how I knew that movie sucked? Because I didn't cry once.
Mm.
And I cry in Star Wars every time. Even Last Jedi got me going, man. Like, and not even one time did it happen in Rise of Skywalker. And I got home and I was like, why did that? Oh.
Bull. I call BS. I went with
What?
you that night.
Wait.
You cried when they led the audience on that they killed Chewie.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
No. And
Nope,
you were
Choosing
not
to
there
believe
with
Justin.
me. And you were not there with me that first night. It was
Yeah.
Revisionist
I was with
history
you
in
when the whole
action.
group went.
No.
Yep.
You can think that, I guess, but I'll
Oh,
blame the
no,
stroke
no.
on that.
It
I'm
was
gonna flip that
Evan,
around and blame
it
the
was
stroke
me.
on you.
It was what's his name? Tyler.
I don't
Yeah.
remember who was there, but I know Josh was there. Is what Justin is saying.
No,
I don't know who any of these people are.
there was not a single scene where I was emotional in Rise of Skywalker. I can guarantee.
Yeah,
that.
bullshit.
So Ricky was there too. Okay, so let's move on.
Actually, he was.
I'm actually more.
Oh my
Are you
God.
telling me Ricky paid money to see a Star Wars movie?
That's
I
that's
don't
how I
buy
know
it
Justin's
whatsoever.
stroke brain is getting at him because Ricky was not there. um, so the next scene, my personal favorite scene, it actually comes right now. It's the ground assault, where the ground assault begins with Ahsoka, and they're running towards the base, and they're trying to get in to stop Thrawn. And at this point, this is where Thrawn.
Rain hellfire upon them. There'll be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker.
I don't think Thrawn has ever said a more truer statement than that. There is absolutely no negotiating with Anakin, and there is absolutely no negotiating with his Padawan. And I loved that you're kind of realizing how smart Thrawn is, and how intuitive he is, and how he like really studies up on things and knows like, oh, I know Anakin, and I know Darth Vader, and I know those guys are not forces to be messed with. And so then when he says, rain hellfire upon them, like I think that's one of the first times we've ever heard that in a Star Wars, in a Star Wars.
Well,
And it was incredible. Lars Mikkelsen gives such a good performance with Thrawn.
but it brings up the question of, does Star Wars have heaven and hell in it?
Yeah,
Like-
I thought the same thing. I didn't want to bring it up, but I'm glad you did.
Episode 1, Anakin asks. Anakin asks.
He does. He
Padme.
asks if she's an
Asks
angel.
if she's an angel.
That's true.
I don't. I don't.
There's
I
no,
don't need
there's no
that.
heaven and hell in this universe.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
We're
Point-
getting
point
deep here
being-
now.
Point being, like, I as a Trekkie, I'm fine with villains taking artistic license and maybe having terminology available to them that doesn't make sense for them to have available. But it did. I mean, I love that scene, and again, it was gorgeous, and it really drove home to me that Thrawn is a good villain because he is without mercy, and he's not an idiot. Like, yes, you should just shoot them. You should always just shoot them. Like, you should never let hubris get in the way of you finishing your task, which is what most Imperials do, right?
Well, and
So I liked that, but it did
kinda
make me
throws-
go,
sorry.
wait.
it kind of throws back to the very first scene of this series where the Republic, where Balin and Shin show up to that ship, and the Republic officer is like, I don't believe it. I'm going to go call their bluff. And then he just gets murdered. So
Yeah, he should have shot their ship out of the sky
Just- yeah.
immediately.
they
Like,
just open the doors, all guns blazing. Like, so yeah, it's good to see Thrawn in all of his glory. Basically, I had a big
Captain,
thing
we should
about
raise
it.
shields.
Yeah, I had a big
I
thing
will
about
say-
it last week.
I took part of that first episode as just like a direct indictment of Star Trek. Like, they have a captain on the bridge going, no, let's negotiate, and then he actually tells somebody else, hey, you have the bridge. Like, it was very much a Star Trek moment at the start of a Star Wars. But
And
I
then
liked it.
everyone died in true
Yeah.
Star Trek fashion.
And to me, that was them going like, here's why you don't negotiate with some characters. Like, and I liked it. I thought it was effective.
Yeah,
Well, Anakin had two negotiation styles: regular, which meant to delay, and then aggressive negotiations, which meant to fight you real soon.
just wreck things. Yeah.
Anyone else want to negotiate?
Yeah. And it was a really good introduction to this whole last battle scene, because this whole episode is just action from basically start to finish. maybe not very beginning, but from now it's just all action. And we get, the Night Sisters giving their gift to the stormtroopers, basically. I love that Thrawn brings up, do the Night Troopers know what's happening right now? Do they understand what's going on? And, Morgan is like, yes, they all understand that they're here to die, basically. They're not going to live. They're not going to make it back home. They know they're going to die. Now, what we didn't realize was that these guys were all still living. I think we had a theory last week or the week before that they were already dead and that they were basically zombies already. Now, this kind of proves that they were not dead, that the Night Sisters had to give them this gift to make sure that they came back to life. And this is Justin's actual first, his Sarlacc killer scene is during this part where all the Night Troopers get killed, and then they come back at the 20-minute and 49-second mark, and you see the little green smoke. So, Justin, I know you were just over there raising your hand feverishly. What did you have to say?
Well, first, I'll defend this point that those guys that did the canes from WF like choke up and hold were definitely dead for a long time. And I think Phil will agree. Like once the mask is broken off, you see him like decomposing already. But to get into this scene, it's the fizzy little green mist coming up and into the stormtrooper and resurrecting him. As a big fan of zombie flicks, you really don't see a wide photo or a picture of a zombie being resurrected, especially from ground level. So that was a great way to view this, and then just to see his hand crunch it right at the end into a fist was so ominous. It was I was just screaming at the same time, like, oh, my two favorite genres are combining, zombies and Star Wars.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see that they were actual zombies. That they died and then they were brought back to life, basically. And it's like, now that they bring zombies into Star Wars, like how the hell are you going to defeat these guys? They did everything they could. I mean, they had to, and that's what I was going to say. They had to do the headshot basically to get rid of them. But Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra were struggling with this first batch of zombie troopers.
Lightsabers don't even hurt them.
Well, yeah, that's not true. If you put a lightsaber through their face, they will stop. And I was originally upset
by removing the head or destroying the brain.
Brainstem. I had initially
Imagine
bugged
saying
on
that to the general public
because I was like, I don't care about zombies at all, and I don't need them in Star Wars. But I was able to get past it because I realized, these good characters are not headshotting guys immediately because they only fight because they have to, right? Like they're not fighting with anger, and that's why they're not giving headshots and stuff like that. So it actually worked for me eventually. I just had to think about it for a second, and I stand by. I don't care about zombies at all.
Well, and again, not watching the animated series, it's kind of jarring because in Clone Wars and Rebels, we got to see Night Sisters actually raise people from the dead, and we got to see actual Night Sister zombies. Justin and I used to play this game called Galaxy of Heroes. We talked about it all the time, and one of the characters is a Night Sister zombie. So I am very familiar with all of the zombie lore in Star Wars, but people like you, the normies, might not appreciate that as much.
I've seen enough zombie things and played enough zombie video games to last me several lifetimes. It's not that it's not that I'm like Star Wars can't do that. It's just that I'm over the concept of zombies. Yeah,
I get it.
They're coming to get you, Ezra.
Oh my god. And Justin, you brought up another really good point, was the Sabine and Ezra battle with the undead. That was a direct callback to Death Troopers, the book. the cover of that book is a zombie with half of its mask missing, and you see the like decaying face underneath. And so when that happened in this episode, when Sabine just shoots that stormtrooper in the face and nothing really happens, you just see the dead body. I was like, oh my God, Phil was right. This is crazy. And it kind of makes me want to go back and read those books.
Hang on.
Hang on. Here we go.
Say that again. Loop back to that.
Right.
Okay.
Phil
Hey,
was right.
one more time.
Phil was right.
Okay,
Phil was
cool.
right.
Boom.
Wait, so Josh said Phil was right, and then Ricky drops a heart in the chat. Did I just pop into an alternate universe? What's going on?
You might have. They probably
I
turned
rich
on the
this
Hadron Collider again. We just shifted.
Quick, look up a Berenstein Bears book.
Oh my God. So, God, when we talked about Ahsoka versus Morgan. Oh, here we go. One big scene of this is actually Jesse's one-chimer. It is the scene with Sabine, and it leads into kind of my next big topic of discussion. So let's play Jesse's one-chimer real
Roll
quick.
that beautiful bean.
Friends are dead. And you will die here. Alone.
Not alone.
She
Take it away,
delivered that. She delivered that with more emotion than maybe any of Ahsoka's lines. And I hear you, Justin. She's the calm, cool, chilled out Ronin. That's fine. She's also the main character. I should care about what she feels, and I didn't end up in that space. I ended up caring about Sabine and what she wanted and what she felt and the journey that she was on. And that is the moment where you should be reminded, yeah, Jedi tried to sterilize emotion out of their whole process, but that is no way to operate, and that's not going to win you fights. That's going to get your order decimated. So when Josh asked me to pick a line, my response, I think, was the dialogue is bad, but I'll see what I can find. And that's honestly how I felt. Like, none of the dialogue outside of maybe Thrawn and Sabine had me in a spot of like, oh, this is really great conversational dialogue. Hu Yang had some really good lines too. But like, most of the characters in this had lines that were, how do we get to the next plot point? Well, you have to explain this, and then the next plot point will happen. And I get it. I fully get it. Like, you got to move the plot forward somehow. But for me personally, it didn't work. And I really want to stress right here that I am not telling people that they shouldn't like the show. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy it, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it didn't work for me. That's all I'm saying.
And that's something I think the more shows and movies should do, is that, you know, the general consensus of this whole, like, oh, they had to make a movie that appeases to all audiences. Like they said this.
Okay.
Like, I've heard this about Suicide, the first Suicide Squad. Like, oh, we had to make a movie that everyone would enjoy, and not just hardcore DC fans. Like, or you could have made a movie for hardcore DC fans to like, and make a good movie, and then eventually people would come around to it, instead of making the piece of trash that's maybe diatribe for the last 5 years anytime anyone brings it up.
And I have to address this, Phil, because I have had this conversation in real life, okay? Which is, I honestly chalked up my dislike of Hayden Christensen's performance in the prequels to George Lucas not being good at writing dialogue, which I think is something George Lucas has said. Like, hey, I'm much better at putting a story together than I am writing dialogue, right? But after watching this, I think maybe I just don't like Hayden Christensen as an actor, because I felt nothing when he was on screen. He gave me nothing as far as gravity goes. I didn't feel like he was emotive, and I am not going to give Star Wars a pass on dialogue just because George Lucas is bad at it. Like, that's okay for his movies. But I've seen Dave Filoni write good dialogue, and that was not here for the most part, in my opinion. So I wanted to address that because I don't want you to think that I'm just making blanket statements.
Oh no, I'm just giving you shit.
Oh,
Totally
that's funny. We had a huge discussion about that, about how like Hayden actually, if you compare Hayden's portrayal of Anakin in this to the prequel trilogies, it's leaps and bounds better, just because he had actual direction.
I'd say he was better in the Obi-Wan series than he was in either of the other two places, personally.
Okay, Justin, what you got to say over there?
All right, Jesse. I got to circle back to this because you've brought her up 3 times now. You haven't watched Rebels, and so you like Sabine in her character arc and her growth. But to me personally, I'm just gonna say it. She's a fucking cunt.
Whoa!
Me as a Rebels fan, I see her as a totally different side, and I'm like, I can't believe you did this. Like, this is the whole reason he sacrificed himself is to prevent the war getting worse. And I hear you justify her getting better throughout her struggles between the apprenticeship and her and Ahsoka, and I'm like, no, she's being a cunt. Just gonna say it.
That's 2 bleeps that I gotta make now in this episode.
I thought you censored yourself on purpose, but no, that was just like a poorly or a well-timed glitch in your audio.
Audio cut.
Did it earlier.
No, I can see where you would be upset with her actions, but like, she's the most realistic character in the show, man. Like, everybody else is too stilted and magical and up their own ass about their philosophy, and she's like, no, I'm trying to get by. So what I would ask you, Justin, is, do you not realize that she's the character that would be the most like you in this situation?
Damn you, Jesse. Damn you.
Sit down, Justin.
Of course I would pick in my favor and my self-interest, but I don't want to watch that.
Jesse, how can you drop the mic that you have like?
Let me unclip it here. Yeah. But that's my point, is like, I want to see stories that I can believe, and her character I can believe. The rest of these, and I get it, it's about space magic, it's sci-fi, all that stuff. But like on an emotional level, you want to be able to believe the characters, and to me, she is the one in this show that you can believe. Like, you can see where she's coming from. Everything she does makes sense. No, they're not all the right choices, but like, how many times in your life have you had 2 choices to make and you went with whatever felt better, even if it wasn't the correct, air quote, correct thing, right? Like, I will not sit here and say that I always make all the correct choices in every situation, because that would be a lie. So I appreciated having somebody on screen to relate to, especially as somebody who doesn't know these characters at all. I was like, that's the character that I care about, because I can relate to her. I can't relate to Ahsoka. I can't relate to this droid. Like, I really liked Ezra's beard, but that's not like enough for me to
I swear a lot, so I relate to Chopper pretty solidly.
Yeah, like and again, I don't mean to tell you how to watch the show. I'm just trying to give you a perspective of somebody who didn't have an investment in it coming in.
Now, Steve, how do you feel? Because I feel like that Jesse's point of view is very from the obviously casual fan, non-Rebels viewer, but you're a little more like into it. Like, how do you feel about that? When
I'm sorry, I stopped listening to Jesse like a long time ago.
Unless it's one of my shows.
Oh, I meant today. I do think it follows with her character arc from Rebels. I will say when the show started, hearing that she had undergone any kind of Jedi training was a shock to me. I had no idea that's where they were taking the series. So I was like, oh, interesting. I thought she just had, in the trailer, like, she had the lightsaber. I just figured she was a skilled warrior, and she was skilled with the darksaber, so she just knew how to use it as a weapon. I had no idea that they were going to make her a Jedi apprentice. So this whole whole arc with her and Ahsoka having some kind of conflict over her training and her force abilities has been entirely new ground to me. So I'm still kind of processing it. So I need to watch the series again in order to answer that question properly.
I also gotta ask: do you think it's a good parallel with Anakin, right? Because he lets his emotions take over, and he, that's ruinous for him. And it's cool to see Anakin be, in my opinion, it's cool to see Anakin be Ahsoka's teacher, and then see Ahsoka have to deal with kind of the same issues that Anakin had in her own apprentice. Like, you're going to have to figure out how to overcome this, because the last time a Jedi in Ahsoka's life let themselves be ruled by emotion, she walked away. And now she has this chance to actually do the work with Sabine and teach her, like, hey, I failed last time. This was an option for me, but you clearly need some guidance, and I'm here to provide that for you.
Justin, did your mind just explode?
Yeah. All right. I'm a dick. Yep.
Sit down, Justin.
You see a whole new perspective, and I appreciate it all that much more in like that span of a 15-second sentence. Thank you. All right, I'll shut the hell up.
I try to watch. To Phil's point, I try to watch with a critical eye, but I really do try to give everything a chance.
No, I know you do, and I legitimately do appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, and Jesse, no one here is actually has any animosity towards you for not being a Star Wars person.
I think Josh does, but I'm okay with that because
no, that's not just because of that. God.
No,
it's a whole other secret thing that we don't talk about.
It's multifaceted, very extensive.
Oh, we're starting into stuff that I don't know.
We can get into a whole. We could do a whole podcast on that.
One of the biggest reasons I have Jesse come on this show and later on in series of Star Wars is because of this. Because he gives a much bigger perspective than a lot of people that I know, and he looks at things in such a different way than we do, especially as Star Wars homers. That, like Justin just figured out right now, it's good to get that different perspective sometimes. So I did want to bring up, and Phil, we'll give you a little bit of speaking time here because you haven't been talking very much, so I feel bad. But what did you think of Sabine's force powers? She finally, you were right again. Here we are. Yeah, bask in that, I guess. But then tell us about Sabine picking up the lightsaber with the Force.
I thought that aspect of it was the natural progression of what we'd seen from her in the series to this point. That we'd seen her kind of developing her study, her practice. We see her, playing around with the teacup earlier in the series. And again, the first actual big bit of telekinesis that we saw in the original trilogy, one of the most immediate examples is Luke pulling his lightsaber to his hand in the ice cave on Hoth. Okay. So it's a nice nod to that. It's a good early step for an adult Force user, for somebody who's learning not as a child, not coming in and having grown up in the traditions. It's a predictable bit, but it fits the narrative well. I saw people talking about how they would have preferred the whole boosted leap, the literal leap of faith, to have been the first major instance rather than the lightsaber pull, which I could have seen them pulling off with Ezra tossing, force tossing the lightsaber to her hand. and then going from there. That would have been kind of a fun subversion of the expectation, where you see her again reaching out and suddenly the lightsaber's in her hand, but you realize it was Ezra the whole time. Could have worked too. And people saying that, maybe having the leap of faith be the bigger kind of thing. But I also like that set up the leap of faith bit or later on.
I was just going to say,
we know now, we have the proof that she can do this thing. And yeah, she's going to go just from that. But I mean, Luke went from, grabbing the lightsaber to, suddenly learning how to try to lift his X-Wing out of a fucking swamp.
Right.
So,
and it was a really good kind of introduction. I think doing the Force jump, the Force push would have been so unbelievable without seeing the lightsaber getting pulled first. That's why they did the Force pull.
Yeah, it needed to have the setup before the payoff.
Right, but it was great callbacks.
Push that around.
Great callbacks to not only Empire Strikes Back, but again Rebels, because Kanan and Ezra, that was like their shtick. Like they were always pushing each other off or over these giant canyons, like multiple times through the series.
The push me pull you thing, where they just
It's good to see Roy in the chat. Thanks for dropping in. He says worst episode of the season. Okay. All build up just to fall flat. Some good moments, but written like we got scab writers due to the strike. Felt like a Heroes Season 2 try at story.
My assumption is that this was completely written before the strike, but Roy,
written and filmed. It was done before May. So.
I'll just say, Roy, go back and listen, because I made some points that you're going to agree with.
Yeah, if you're just coming in now, definitely check out the podcast when it drops on Tuesday and listen to the first part, because you and Jesse agree on most things, Roy. So I guarantee that you would enjoy what Jesse had to say at the beginning here. Did anyone else have anything to touch on when it comes to Sabine and using the Force? Steve?
I was genuinely surprised that Phil was right. Nothing against Phil, but I was surprised that they actually gave her that moment.
She leveled up.
And that goes against. I didn't think she was going to be a Force user. Like I thought she would have the Force sensitivity. Like she was able to communicate with Ahsoka when Ahsoka was trying to find her. But I mean, the fact that earlier in that same scene, she's using her lightsaber to fight off the zombie troopers, or maybe they weren't zombie troopers yet, but she was fighting off, and then Ahsoka was like, Sabine, blasters. And she put her saber away and pulled out her blasters because she's better with her blasters. And so it just, the fact that they are giving her the Force abilities this early, I thought it would be much more precedent if we jump back to them next season and they've been on this planet forever and actually doing the training properly, that would be a little bit better. Now, granted, the Force has been, we see in the movies and other canon where it can be unlocked by moments of stress and dire need, and then you, once you breach that hurdle, that barrier, it's like, oh hey, like I've figured this out a little bit more just because of what just happened to me. And so, yeah, maybe the stress of having the life almost choked out of her did allow for that moment.
So, and I'm looking at it in a video game perspective, where she killed enough stormtroopers over and over that she gained enough experience to level up enough to
Freddie Prinze Jr. is about to join this chat.
She did not take a long rest. She did not take the opportunity to level up.
She did hit the save marker, though, before she got to the top of that ledge.
And two things here. First thing, Steve, I'm pretty sure Freddie Prinze Jr. said, there's no way in hell I'm ever going to be in Star Wars again. And the second thing,
I said in this chat. I said in this chat he's going to show up.
That's that I could believe.
Because his exact words were, "You don't level up in a fucking video game."
Yeah, that was such a cool interview.
But let me ask, do you feel this might have been better served by Ahsoka's flashback scenes having to do with her training Sabine, as opposed to just watching a rehash of a show you had already seen with her and Anakin? Like, if she were reminded, like, oh, here's how I failed Sabine the first time, let me redouble my efforts, let me make the commitment and the choice to actually stick with her, despite the fact that, yes, it is incredibly frustrating to work with her. She's a Mandalorian. She's very hard-headed. Do you think that if you had gotten some view into the training that she was supposed to have already had, do you think that her moments of Force use would have been easier to accept? Because I found
genuinely
myself
surprised that in that episode when Anakin was flashing her all around, that they didn't take us to one of those scenes.
Yeah,
like that should have happened. I'll give it to you.
I found myself going, I don't need this. Like, show me the characters that are in the show. Not
Because that's not in Rebels at all.
Yeah,
They're-
and
the only Force training that Sabine ever has is lightsaber training,
well, and
and
Anakin
that was the darksaber.
and Anakin's not a character in this Ahsoka show. Like, I don't want to see characters that don't affect the outcome of this. Like, there were enough name drops. There were enough moments of Ahsoka going, here's how I feel about Anakin. Here's what happened with Anakin. Everybody knows who Anakin is. I didn't need him to be physically on the screen at all. I would have much preferred more time with the characters from this show. And that's why
disagree.
I ask that.
I think in that episode that if he had done what I just said, if he had taken her to a point where she was training Sabine, and then it honestly could have been a little cool of like, oh hey, like, you remind me of me when I was trying to be your master. That would have been a great scene. I don't think we needed to see, as cool as it was, if we had skipped the whole like, hey, what was this? Like, oh, this is the Siege of Mandalore. You weren't even here. Like, why the hell did he bring her there? He wasn't there. He should have brought. I mean, of course, he wasn't there for her training Sabine either, but he should have brought her to that or we could just, it's streaming. Let's make the episodes a little longer. Disney has the money. We can have hour episodes each. What the fuck?
Valid complaint and something I agree with. Like,
Yeah.
why
Preach.
why end on a cliffhanger when you are given if they tell you've 8 episodes, you better make damn sure that by the end of the first act of episode 8, the main story is wrapped up. And then you can have, in my opinion, you can have 30 minutes of denouement and loose ends and teases for next season. Like, you can have all of that if you wrap up this arc in the first act. Because as it is, like, I feel like this ended in Act 2 or like Act 3 of a 5-act show, and then went, don't worry, we'll have another season. Which I'm like, dude, you're not going to sell me on the next season if you didn't finish the first one. Like,
And I think they're falling victim to the MCU trap, where they're really trying hard to intertwine everything, and just like DC is kind of fallen into that trap, where they're really trying hard to make this giant universe and make it make sense, because that's what they're doing essentially is gonna wrap Mandalorian, Ahsoka, and whatever else they have into the Filoni movie.
and this is a fair point, Steve, that Filoni has a boss. And what I will say is I fully get it. Like, my biggest complaint with Star Trek Picard season 3 is that the showrunner spent so much time going, just give me another show. You're going to love what I put in that show if you just give me another show. And he had so many setups for whatever he thinks his next show is going to be that it cost Picard season 3 a lot of its heart and soul. Now, I don't
3
know
was
that
better
I feel...
than 2, but
God, anything was better than 2.
But here's the messed up
Yeah,
part,
still.
Phil, is at the end of the entire series of Picard, you look at it and you go, oh my God, the first season is actually the best one. And that's
best,
saying something. Like,
Yep.
that's rough.
yeah,
So,
no, it's true.
I like Filoni's storytelling. I trust him in the long run. I think he's a very good writer. I'm glad that Star Wars has him. But I do have I did get a couple feelings of him going like, please let me make another season. And it feels like maybe he had to convince Disney to allow a second season. So, you know, from a human perspective, like had I met the guy in real life, I'd probably be like, dude, I totally get it. I totally get why you would do that. I don't appreciate watching it, but I totally get why you would do that. And I might even do the same thing if given the chance. So
I'm actually not even sure if
Fair.
they're going to do like an Ahsoka season 2. Or it's
Hasn't
just, like,
been
they're gonna-
confirmed yet.
Yeah, they're going to continue
Well,
these
so-
character stories in just another series.
And
or
so
another
here's the thing.
area.
The official Star Wars Twitter account said something like, go watch the season finale of Ahsoka, which I took to mean they're going, you know what, okay, we'll give you your second season. You know, you can't start it right now because SAG-AFTRA is still on strike because the AMPTP is a greedy bunch of babies. But if you'd like to start, you know, pre-production and planning, go for it.
Makes sense. And all very valid points. See, this is why we bring you on. And like I said on Twitter earlier, we just save the best for last. Phil, I did accidentally skip over your Starlight Killer scene, but we're going to kind of put those into one little area and talk about Thrawn's escape here. So the first part of that, your Starlight Killer scene, comes in at 17 minutes and 4 seconds, and it's Thrawn preparing for the escape while Ahsoka and Sabine are preparing for the ground assault. Why did you pick this scene, Phil?
Wide shot.
Exactly. No, it's a gorgeous wide shot. We see so much of just the landscape of Peridia. It's all the fog and clouds. It's very Highlands. We've got a very nicely split foreground on the left, background on the right. It's just beautiful composition. It's a really well structured shot. And it just kind of showcases what exactly they're up against. We have 3 people riding 2 howlers versus a Star Destroyer. And it's a phenomenal setup for the entire battle that is going to follow for the rest of the episode.
Wait a minute. Is that tree copy pasted? Look at the tree.
No, so there's a whole bunch of
Holy shit. Hang on. Let me
these
bring
little
this up.
sculptures that are scattered all over the surface of Peridia. You see them as Ahsoka and Sabine are coming into land earlier in the season. But yeah, no, they are like from a creative standpoint. Yeah, no, those are absolutely just copied and pasted across the thing. Yeah.
Now, but I will say, Phil, I'm gonna assume
there's
that
at least 2 more in the background.
there's
By
one
the way,
more
there's
right
one
there,
there,
too.
Oh,
and
okay, yeah,
pan
yeah.
over a little more to the right. Back to the right.
Oh,
there's
right
one
there.
way back there. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're literally all over the surface of this part of Peridia.
that works for me as an explanation. But I will say, I give that shot credit because I guarantee you that's a shot using the volume.
Yeah,
And it doesn't look like one.
no,
Like it looks like
it
an
looks like a
on-location
matte
shot.
painting.
It's
Yeah.
really, really well done. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I really enjoyed that shot. A lot of their wide shots in this whole series have been phenomenal.
And
the one with
the
Star Destroyer
combination
coming up, just awesome.
the combination of use of like on set or on site kind of bits with the volume, I think is really the best thing that Star Wars could keep doing for that kind of composition. That's
They're doing
just
it much
a
better
beautiful
now
combination than they did
than
in
they
early
were
seasons of Mandalorian. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
They've
definitely.
They've
They
learned
have.
how to use it. Yeah.
They have.
Yep. And so we've discussed a lot about this whole scene. So I'm just gonna skip all the way past the whole battle and everything else that goes through it and go to Phil's one-chimer, which is actually right when Ahsoka and Sabine are chasing after Thrawn's ship, and Ezra is actually on the ship right now. So this is them basically chasing them to catch up or whatever. So here we go with Phil's one-chimer.
Still, I know you because I knew your master. I concluded your strategies would be similar. one wonders just how similar you might become.
Oh, incredible. But Phil, you have the floor. I could say so much about this, but Phil, go for it. Why this one thing?
Because Thrawn has encountered both Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. And the question is, how much of the connection between the two personas is he aware of? How much, and does he know at this point? Does he know that Anakin became Vader, or does he just know who Anakin was and how he would behave? And know kind of the pointlessness of dealing with either one of them at this point.
I think that's Thrawn's secret weapon, though, is knowing that Anakin turned into Darth Vader.
Oh yeah,
And I think he'll use that with not only Ahsoka but Luke in the long run as well. I really am fully expecting to see Luke show up in this anthology. Damn it. I'm going to workshop that. But I fully expect Luke to show up at some point and Thrawn to use Darth Vader against him as well as Ahsoka.
Can we get Sebastian Stan to play him instead of the damn deep fake? Like it got better, but can we just get a person to do it for fuck's sake?
I'm sure that's.
Or can we stop telling the Luke story altogether? Maybe
it's time. It's time. It's time for the Luke story. Thank you.
No. It's time for Luke to take a back seat. Like, I'm okay with him showing up and being part of something, but I know his entire story. I know his entire family's fucking story. I don't need to know anything more about him. I just need him to show up and be a badass. That's
Correct.
it. So, like, don't give me any more lore. But Thrawn can use Darth Vader against Luke as they're fighting. You know, when Luke is fighting the clone of Luke or whatever, Thrawn can be like, "Yo, Daddy was a bitch. Darth Vader didn't know shit." Like, that's just kind of all I want.
He would probably use the same tactic he's using on Ahsoka, which is like, "Hey, you have the capacity for super evil in you. Remember?"
And that's all. That almost is what made her like not accelerate the ship fast enough to catch them. I feel like for some reason,
I took that as they just couldn't catch up. Like, it's supposed to illustrate that Thrawn is smart enough to not let himself lose, and the heroes lose at the end of this, which I'm generally fine with. It was just weird to me that the heroes would choose to lose as long as they got to trade Ezra's freedom, basically. Like, that doesn't work for me, but I get it.
But here's the biggest thing of letting Ezra go and being okay with it. Now that Ezra has shown his face to the New Republic, they can finally start believing that Thrawn is real and Thrawn is returned. Otherwise, you're going to have other Xionos that are like, "I don't believe you. We're just going to strip you of your rank and you're spewing fairy tales." I think that letting Ezra go gives the New Republic a better chance at actually preparing for Thrawn.
I disagree.
I don't know.
I think the New Republic is going to fail. And
why listen to Ezra over Ahsoka? Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm genuinely asking you.
No, and it's Phoenix Squadron is going to be the new rebellion against the New Republic instead of against the Empire.
I think it's because the New Republic is trying so hard to not believe that another war is coming that they're trying to will it out of existence and not giving Ahsoka and Hera and those people a chance to defend it, you know.
But then why would they just believe Ezra if he's like, "No, I was on his ship. I saw him. I was in the same place as him." They'd be like, whatever.
Because there's reports and documents. There's reports and documents of the Thrawn battle and Ezra taking him away on Purgo or the space whales.
Right,
Well,
but
even that one
Hera
senator didn't believe it.
But Hera told the council that to their face. Like, I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just asking, like, what has changed, because it feels to me like at the end of season 1 of this show, we're in very similar place that we were at the start, except we're actually down 2 Jedi now instead of 1.
And it makes sense. I just think that it's now a little bit.
Math.
it's a little more. The New Republic's probably going to be a little more apt to believe with this solid proof of Ezra returning, and that's
There was some mention of him being like a great hero by
Yeah.
one of the general guys, so I could maybe see that. I just, I have to ask the question because that's my function.
well, yeah, it makes sense.
The greatest
So-
trick that Dell ever pulled was convincing folks he didn't exist. Thrawn is not going to show himself for a long
Right.
time. He's going to try and hide. And so
Right.
he's going to be pretending that he doesn't exist and have his
Right.
agents be like, no, like sow discord that I'm not actually back. I'm
Right.
still
Oh
dead.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's
100%
going to be really
agree with
fun.
that.
It's going to be really fun to see how that all plays out for sure.
And,
Um,
and it's cool we got confirmed of where we are in the timeline with the Mandalorian season 3 and seeing all those Imperial remnant generals gather together because
mhm.
soon the guy's going to be eating his words.
That was one of my
Yeah,
two
for
predictions that ended up being correct. Go, Steve.
Nice. Oh yeah, Steve, you were
Go,
right.
Steve.
Sorry, I forgot to say that earlier. but
Steve,
were
you
right.
were right.
Josh was wrong all season, and I'm cool with that. Sometimes
I
I win,
was-
sometimes I lose. I lost hard this season. though,
Takes a big
so-
man.
I
I'll
was
take it.
wrong about. I realized I was wrong about Carson Teva being a young pilot in Phoenix Squadron
Mm,
because he would know who Kanan was and therefore who Jason was
yeah,
if he
that's
was
true.
around.
That's
But I was
true.
also right about Thrawn showing up in that very next episode.
Okay, fair.
So
Um,
2 for 3. I'll take it.
So we had one more segment to go through, not segment, but segment piece, and that's Jesse's, of course, saving the best for last. I picked this scene right away, and then Jesse ruined it and picked it. It comes in at the 37-minute and 38-second mark. It's by far one of the best shots of the entire series. Jesse, why did you pick this shot?
This is an anime shot. When you get the
Absolutely.
circle lining up with a circle, I mean, it's a composition. I'm a sucker for good visual composition in any storytelling. This feels almost like a shot out of Cowboy Bebop for me. There's some
Ooh.
space. There's some ruddy planet, which I can picture as a desert, which makes it a western. And I loved this whole piece of tech. This hyperspace ring with like 15 engines strapped to it.
Yeah.
Like, that is such a basic yet well done idea. Like, what if we put more engines on it? Would that work? And I mean, they're clearly setting up, these galaxies to be a traversable thing, right? Like, you don't have to ride a space whale. We call them Gormaganders. But you can, or you could like construct a hot rod and just strap more horsepower to it. And to go the extra level, yes, the story comes full circle here, and you have two circles layered on top of each other. It's a great visual metaphor. Like I said, I actually really like the visuals for kind of the whole series. And I think there are some things that, if constructed correctly, they can stand almost exclusively on their visuals. I just don't think that this show was designed to do that, personally.
I agree.
But I love that shot, especially the part where it's actually matched the circumference on its way in. It's a good shot, and I'm a sucker for a really basic set of circles overlapping.
Yeah, so watching that, I looked back at my girlfriend, and I was like, that's my shot right there. That's the one I'm picking. And then it was like hours later, you were like, nope. But it is one of the best shots of the entire series, I think. Just seeing the hyperspace ring in front of Dathomir and knowing what's about to take place with the Night Sisters and stuff is really cool. I had one last topic of discussion, and then we'll get out of here. We're actually doing really well. This afternoon I was really scared that this episode was going to go for like 4 hours, and I did not want to deal with that. So
I almost dipped out of the whole thing because Jesse was coming. I was like,
Oh.
it's going to take too damn long.
Yeah, and I told Steve, I was like, it's okay. I have a plan, and I feel like it's worked okay so far. So the last topic that I had, which we have not really discussed at all this whole episode, is Balin and Shin. Let's start with Shin because she's, you don't see very much of her, but it seems like she gave up as well. She didn't even try to get back. It was like she exiled herself, kind of, where she's like, I failed. I didn't kill Ezra. I didn't kill Sabine. The Empire is not going to want me back. I'm just going to become a nomad. Balin left me. I'm going to go join these people. Were you guys under that same impression? Jesse, you seem to disagree.
So I was under the impression that Balin had his whole own set of goals the entire series. And he was like, I just need to get to the place and bring my apprentice with me, and then we will actually show back up as the force to be reckoned with. Like, yeah, Thrawn's great. Let's totally help this person get to Thrawn. But
literally,
I just need to
Jesse,
go
the
where the power is, and I need to claim it for myself. Because they put him on this statue where I'm like, okay, where did the statue come from? Who is the statue of? I asked that rhetorically. I don't actually care.
Don't worry, we're going to talk about it when you're done.
But point being, there was enough there for me to insinuate that his motivation, and in his performance, his motivation is, I don't care about the squabble between the New Republic and the Empire and that kind of thing. I will gladly use either side of that conflict to put myself in proximity to my actual goal, which unfortunately is in another galaxy. But once I get there, I'm happy to stay there and, do what I need to do. And I think it's actually a really good parallel to Ahsoka and Sabine, right? Because she's like, this is exactly where we're supposed to be. We need time. Like, don't worry. And here's the other side of the Force, the balance, right? That you guys are all whatever about. He's going, we need something on our side, to make this balance true. Like, maybe he could take Ahsoka in a fight while she's distracted and there's a bunch of stuff going on, right? But Balin can't defeat an entire republic by himself. He also probably couldn't defeat all of Thrawn's forces by himself. But there's something on this planet that he wants, and he has made it his business to get there. And he brought his lieutenant, his apprentice, with him. And I think he probably told her, like, okay, go recruit the whomever that is, the bandits, and then bring them to where I am, and that'll be the start of our I don't want to say empire because that's a loaded word here, but like that'll be the start of our cabal, right? That's kind of what I got from it. I will throw out that I was a little disappointed that his apprentice got to fight so many people with lightsabers but never kill anyone. Like, somebody needs to win if you're going to be in that many lightsaber fights. But I really liked both of those characters.
There needs to be at least a hand chopping. We got through an entire Star Wars series without someone getting a hand chopped off. What?
Well, we got a decapitation, though.
It's not a
stormtrooper.
Now, here's how you can tell,
right,
though, that this wasn't directed by George Lucas. No one got a hand chopped off.
It's always in the second part.
Yeah.
Well, and
okay,
like I'm okay with cliffhanging their motivations,
sir,
because they're not the main characters. But where they chose to put the shots of those characters in this episode made me go, why? Like, why? Like you're just reminding me that
saving
you
it
have
for
not,
the very, very end.
You're reminding me that you haven't tied up another loose end. Like,
I mean,
if you put those shots in the middle of this episode, I think it actually works better, because then you're like, oh, right, they're there, and now I can focus on the characters that the show is about.
To be fair, they probably weren't able to do any
reshoots,
any kind of pickups with Ray Stevenson. So,
and that sucks because he
kicked
God.
ass.
Like,
he was the best part of the show. Probably.
He was absolutely phenomenal. Talk about a
besides Thrawn,
phenomenal. Okay,
I got evil
best,
Qui-Gon.
Best new character.
Yeah.
Best new character. Best character introduced in this series. Yeah.
And he's like a technomancer Jedi. Like, his force powers are very specifically like machinery and tech based. Like, That was really cool. I liked.
I
seeing that.
legitimately really hope that he gets, at the very least, a continuation of his story in a novel somewhere.
That'd be
Whether Balin's Skull is recast, I have seen a lot of people talking about and arguing solidly for Liev Schreiber as a replacement because 2-year age gap and same height. So
and he would do a
potentially
really
good.
solid job.
He'd do it well.
Similar
But-
facial hair capabilities as well. Yeah.
But without recasting, I really, really hope they do continue Balin Skull's story somewhere down the line because he's a fascinating character.
I mean, imagine if they hadn't recast Dumbledore.
Who?
Right. Like, what do you
Dumbledore.
do? Do you write that character out? Like, they've set him up to need to be there. Like, I am excited for that character, and I hope that they find a way to do the character justice in the next season of this show. Because to me, his character is the tacit admission that there is going to be another season, right? Like, or they plan to start a movie trilogy or whatever. It's so hard to tell with Star Wars, but like,
yeah, it is. Oh my god.
they promised you that his story will continue, and I hope that we get to see that on screen, because if it's in a book or a comic book, I'm not going to get to see it, and that would suck.
Yeah.
I'm a little
Go for
bit
it,
late to the game, but how about Ron Perlman?
That would too.
And
After what
Again?
he said
Perlman.
about Bob Iger, hell yeah.
I don't think that would happen.
I'm here for Perlman in all forms, personally.
Yeah.
I adore Ron Perlman. I don't think he's right for this character. I'd love to see him in a Star Wars thing at some point down the line.
Definitely
Um,
He's a
He's
little
lying.
too
He's so hot right now.
and he's very like aggressive and like imposing, whereas I feel Balin is more like mysterious and like terrifying in his
Composed.
mysteriousness. Yeah, composed and scary.
Yeah.
I-
No,
I
I
think
really
it shows-
I
I
think
got evil
Perlman-
Qui-Gon vibes from him.
Yeah.
Like
I think
I
Perlman
mainly
could make
chose-
a solid mob boss somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Ooh, Hondo's Underman.
That's
I-
one thing I was wrong about. I'm sad we didn't see.
Oh.
him in this season.
Oh yeah, that's true.
well,
So don't mean to be a downer on that.
One more time, Josh. You were what?
I was wrong. Look, I've admitted it since
Oh.
episode 4, dude. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, so come on.
Say it again.
Something new.
So let's we're gonna start wrapping this up. We've been talking for a long time about this, and it's been a wonderful episode. We've gone through all of our segments, which is great. I do want to just kind of continue this Balin thing about he is standing on the Mortis statue, which for us Rebels and Clone Wars fans, that is a huge deal. The Mortis family was a big part of, yes, I am wrecked, Ricky, but the Mortis family was a big part of Anakin and Ahsoka's story, and how they became a lot closer. So it's really cool to see the Mortis gods in a different galaxy, and to see how they were part of not just what we have witnessed, but things from a very distant past. I do want to I want to throw out one little theory about the statues and just the Mortis gods in general. They come from a Legends series that discussed the father, the son, the daughter, and also the mother, which is Abeloth. And Abeloth was a mortal character that then became immortal by doing some very questionable things, and she became very evil. And so the Mortis gods had to hide her away to keep her basically trapped. It's like
And the Mortis gods themselves were basically incarnations of different aspects of the Force.
yes. And so right now, in that trilogy in Clone Wars, the sister actually gave her life essence to Ahsoka, because Ahsoka died in Clone Wars. And then she gave her essence to Ahsoka, which kind of explains why the sister statue was not there anymore when Balin was standing on the hand. Because you had the father, the brother, and then on the side of it would have been the sister. But since the sister is alive and well in Ahsoka, she doesn't really exist anymore in the Force. So my big prediction is that Thrawn is actually not the big bad. That Thrawn is going to be kind of a stepping stone into a bigger world of Star Wars. And we might not even see the big bad of Thrawn until the Rey movie or even beyond that, which I believe is going to be Abeloth. They're going to raise, and especially Kathleen Kennedy loves throwing very strong females into roles for Star Wars, and Abeloth is a very strong female villain.
So does Dave Filoni.
Shit. Yes, and exactly. And so I think that this is all going to lead. That Balin is looking for a power beyond anything we've ever seen, and that power is going to be Abeloth, and that she is going to kind of wreak havoc on a lot of different things. So I think it'd be really cool to get more of the Mortis Gods story into Star Wars, because it was a very intriguing story arc in Clone Wars, and it would be especially cool to see it in live action. We also saw Morai, the owl, from the Mortis trilogy. It was basically the sister turned into this owl, which was Morai, and that was the owl that you see at the end of Ahsoka. A really awesome throwback to that, and also another clue that this series is going to lead more into the Mortis Gods and that story than we initially thought. I have one more point, and then I'm going to let everyone kind of go through the last things that they want to say, and then we'll wrap things up. So I did some math. I did a still shot on the inside of the Star Destroyer with all the different coffins. I think they're coffins. I think they hold dead bodies. I think that that's going to be the big thing that Thrawn uses to his advantage is undead stormtroopers. If my math is correct, I am over 6,000 coffins in that one shot alone. And to be exact, it was, I think, 6,438. If I'm not mistaken, or 45. So
did you show your math?
No, I didn't. I just have it written down on my notes. But it was basically 1, 2, 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 12, 24, 36. It was 48 coffins in a stack, and then all the different stacks to equal over 6,000. So I think that's going to be huge in the coming events of this Heir to the Empire sequel that we get for Star Wars, and we're going to see a lot of undead stormtroopers and a lot more Night Sister action when it comes to the Filoniverse. So let's go around the room here and just give kind of our final thoughts or any last things that you wanted to say about this series, and then wrap it up. So let's start with Steve. What were the final thoughts or anything that you had to say?
Yeah, I got three little things to go with. One, in Rebels with the father, the brother, and the sister, pointing was always a big point. And so the fact that Balin is standing on the hand that is actually giving a direction is definitely significant. Granted, it's pointed at Mordor or another fucking skybeam. So
yeah, what the hell was that?
God damn it!
It's definitely Mordor.
I don't need another fucking skybeam. No, I'm
and we're walking.
Yeah, I'm pleased enough as to where this ended. Pleased enough, just knowing whether it's not Ahsoka season 2 or just the series of Star Wars will continue, and we'll find out what's going on with this particular area. But this leads me into why it's a 9.5 instead of a 10. One, I don't think we needed to have Ezra reunited with Hera so quickly, and the fact that they brought him in and everyone had their guns on him was like, dude, like, how did he get that close without you knowing who he was? Maybe you could. She could have thought it was like a fake, but he would have used Fulcrum, like, and that would have given her some ease. And then, of course, as happy as I was, unlike Jesse, to see Anakin again, when they both had that feeling, I was like, Kanan, it's Kanan. And then, yes, I know, of course, that Freddie Prinze Jr. will probably not return to the franchise, but Freddie Prinze Jr., I know you're listening. Come back to Star Wars.
See you in the chat.
we're not all like that. I love you, man. I worked with you. I worked with you and Katie Sackhoff at the same time. Let's get the band back together.
And do another Scooby-Doo while you're at it.
Yeah, why not?
I'm gonna make a TikTok out of that and tag him in it and send it to him.
Kanan is my favorite Jedi, and
You're gonna prevent Steve from ever seeing him in real life again if you do.
Yeah, I would love to see Freddie Prinze Jr. again. It would be incredible.
And I respect his rant. I love that rant. And
Yeah.
he is 100% correct. Like some fans of this franchise are
Suck.
Intolerable.
No one hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans, my friend.
I know.
Yep.
They're just like the Scots and the Irish, or the Scots and the British, or the Scots and the Scots.
But, Phil, nowadays, you get a Scot and an Englishman together on the street, I'd say there's a 50% chance they get along. Anybody watched Garth Marenghi's Dark Place? No?
Oh, no.
Not my fault, monkey bastard hands.
Oh, my goodness. That's funny. Steve, anything else you
I know
wanted to
writers
add?
who use subtext, and they're cowards.
I am really happy we got Rebels Season 5.
Agreed.
And that's the hill that I'm here to die on. So.
All right. Phil, which hill do you want to die on tonight?
I really don't know that I want to die on any hill right now. I'd rather die in a valley, if I'm being perfectly honest. There's a lot less climbing involved.
Did you have any last thoughts or anything about the season or episode?
Last thought, who do we think's in the coffins? Or what? I personally think Night Sisters. And that we're basically just like bringing a whole bunch of Night Sisters back home to Dathomir. And that's going to be kind of the beginning of Thrawn's overwhelming wave to reach out and reconquer the galaxy. That said, I do not think that he would do anything that he doesn't have any kind of control over. Thrawn is not the kind of guy to put himself into a situation where he will not be in command if there is anything that he can do about it. And Steve, yes, absolutely. Also that.
One thing I brought up in the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast that I was on this last weekend was the Bendu actually made, he said that he saw Thrawn's defeat in a cold embrace. I think that in Rebels, we assumed that it was the Star Whales, that it was the Purrgil. But I'm starting to think that maybe it's a bunch of cold, dead Night Sisters wrapping their arms around him and taking him away. So I think the Bendu might have had a different sense than the viewers of Rebels did. Justin, did you have any final thoughts about the series or the episode?
First off, you just blew my mind again with the Bendu. That is wild connection. That's very plausible. First off, I agree with Jesse for once that Anakin is overplayed. They just need to let a dying star fade out. But I love seeing Hayden Christensen get love from the fans that he is finally getting. So at the same time, I can't really hate on it. At the end of the day, I really think the boiling point of the show is if you watched Rebels and if you didn't. If you did, I feel like you're more of a fan of it, and if you didn't, you're so. My future predictions for the show are with the now clear split and division from Thrawn and Ahsoka being in different galaxies. I hope one of the two ways they can go with the show where they just focus on Sabine and Ahsoka being in Peridia, or however you say it, and let the Hera and Ezra and Thrawn just simmer down for the movie. Who knows? But the coffins. the coffins I was just thinking about, and I'm thinking that they're the Sith followers
Oh,
that are in the sequels.
oh, in the Rise of
They're,
Skywalker.
they're,
Okay.
they've been trying hard. Filoni's trying hard to tie these into the
To
sequels and
make it make
linear,
sense.
yeah, and try to make it a linear sort of story as possible as a jagged line. But like he's trying.
I'd agree. And I think that's kind of one of his biggest tasks right now is to make the sequels make sense. And that's okay. If he does it and he does it well, then I'm cool with it. I still don't like the sequels as much as anything else.
No one does.
But if we
Jesse,
retcon them out of existence, then we're just cheap little bastards. So
yeah, we're not gonna.
Yeah, they can't retcon.
Make them work.
We're not gonna do that.
Learn from our mistakes. Failure, the greatest teacher is.
Oh, jeez. Well, Jesse, go ahead and give us your final thoughts, and then we'll get on out of here.
So, again, I hope that you haven't reached the end of this podcast and taken away that I hate Star Wars, because I don't.
I hope people reach the end of this podcast.
I hope you have the time. But
that's a quest in and of itself.
I hope that what you take from this is that I expect stories to be self-contained enough to enjoy them on their own. And that's where this series falls down for me, because there's clearly so many threads that are designed for somebody who has seen all of it to go, oh, I recognize that. Oh, I'm excited to see this prior story continued, that sort of a thing. But just from what we have here, I would really like to see Balin's next step. I would really like to see Sabine's next step. I think it would be cool if Balin was like, oh, hey, guess what, apprentice? We're going to this Force God tomb to resurrect whatever or to get whatever. And he opens it up and finds that it's empty, and that's what Thrawn took with him. And then he has a personal vendetta against Thrawn. Our two Jedi character have this vendetta, and they can work together to get back. Sets up a good, 100 possible moments of betrayal for any combination of characters. I hope that season 2 of this show remembers to wrap its narrative up before they tease season 3. And I will say, current Star Wars is all gorgeous. Like it is so much fun to watch because it is beautiful. It really is. My favorite current new Star Wars is still Visions by kind of a lot. Yeah. Because they do things there that haven't been done in Star Wars before. Watching Ahsoka cut a TIE fighter out of the sky with a damn lightsaber was awesome. Like I really liked that sequence. I'm glad we got to see that in live action, because guess what? I really liked the incredibly wacky giant lightsaber on top of Star Destroyers fight that Visions gave us. Does it make good physical sense? Probably not. Was it cool as hell to watch? Yeah, it was. And I forgave everything about that entire setup because I was like, that was fun to watch. And that's the other place that this falls down for me, is the whole thing wasn't fun to watch. The narrative was always compelling because I had attached myself to the Sabine character. But outside of her, I couldn't find something to latch on to. And I don't know if that's because it wasn't there or because I am not a Star Wars purist. I like to tell people I'm not a Star Wars fan, I'm a Star Wars friend. And what I mean by that is, if you need to tell somebody else that you know that I'm the person in your life who understands Star Wars, that's fine. Because that person's not going to ask enough questions that I won't be able to answer, right? Like, I get Star Wars. I can tell you the basics of all of it. But I don't know. I like this series, but I don't know that I will rewatch it, if that makes sense.
No, that's totally fair. And I feel like Star Wars series fall into that category a lot. Mandalorian is one that I can watch over and over again, but I don't think I'll watch Andor more than twice. Ahsoka,
Andor I could watch 100 times, honestly.
And that's just just me. Ahsoka's the same way. Like, I will watch Ahsoka again, but I don't know if I'll continue to watch it over and over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Boba Fett, I don't think I'll watch that again unless I'm watching the last 3 episodes where it's just Mandalorian. Like,
And this is actually another great spot for me to draw a parallel to Star Trek currently, which is right now there are a lot of flavors of Star Trek. There is a Star Trek for everybody. Do you want animated comedy Star Trek? That's there. Do you want super serious up its own ass Star Trek? Go watch Picard. Do you want like a great entry point with characters you recognize but you don't have all the details on? Check out Strange New Worlds. And while you do that, listen to Open Pike Night.
Boom.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to take us out of here. Of course, all the links for everyone in this show, Jesse, Justin, Phil, and Steve, they will all be in our show notes. So make sure to follow those links. Go to their Twitters, go to their Instagrams, give them a follow, give them a like, give them a listen on their podcast, or buy some of their merch if they got it. It's the best way to support all of us small-time starving artists, and especially check out Steve's work. He does a fantastic job.
Look at that. Look at that. Just look at it.
Just look at that. Go to the YouTube video and look at it. So the Open Pike Night bag, if you order anything from Open Pike Night, they'll send it to you in an Open Pike Night bag. It's freaking great. My last point, and then we'll do a sign-off and get out. I did do a poll about Ahsoka, about the entire series. I had a good amount of votes. The majority of people said that they like it, but they needed more. We had 18% say the best Star Wars ever, 29% said awful, I hate it, and 3% said they didn't understand it. So it seemed like a fairly mixed review on this show, no matter what we see as Star Wars fans, because we always see the best of the Star Wars. I try to look for all of it when it comes to the internet, because there's a lot on both sides for any sort of Star Wars. I would say that Ahsoka, in a whole, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I loved this show. I loved the lore. I loved everything that it gave to us. And I'm excited for more of what Filoni is going to do, whether that be in Mandalorian, in Ahsoka, in the Skeleton Crew, like anything that's coming out. I'm excited to see it because Dave Filoni's doing that good of a job. And I think as a Star Wars fan, he has been one of the better things to come to us, to give us, things that we enjoy.
I'm also just going to throw out, like, because I can have this kind of combative relationship with Star Wars fans, if you're one of the Star Wars fans out there who uses the term Mary Sue to describe what you don't like about current Star Wars, A, get a life, and B, get better arguments, because you're not a fan, you're a hater.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Probably haven't
with that
even looked that term up, honestly. They just heard it somewhere and used it.
I've seen it a couple times, and I'm always just like, what the hell? But anyway, let's get on out of here. We've been doing this show for a while, and it's been so much fun. I can't tell you, Jesse and Steve, how thankful I am to have you on this season finale. It was a wonderful time, and thank you again for participating.
Thank you for the space. I take up a lot of it.
yeah, no, that's why you're here. So, and I look forward to more episodes with all of you guys. Of course, Quest Me, as per usual, is going to take a little bit of a break. We'll be back in November to discuss The Last Command, which is the third book in the original Thrawn trilogy. In the meantime, Mr. Ricky D and I have started a new podcast. It is called Down the Mountain. It is a Colorado Avalanche podcast. It's all about hockey. That we're recording our first episode next week. So that should drop the week after that. And be sure to, follow me on Twitter and get those links. And you can definitely check that out. If you're a hockey fan, we're definitely going to have a lot of fun. I think
it's a really
as
good
nerds, thanks. I did that. Yeah.
It's a really, really good name. Yeah.
Josh, you ready?
Yes.
Good, because you're going. Ricky, you ready? Good, because you're going.
Coming down the mountain.
No, it's more based on the Butthole Surfer song. Look it up.
Avalanche.
Fine.
Look it up.
No,
Coming down
I
the mountain.
know. I just wanted to do.
So
God,
anyway,
I just
I'm
wanted
super-
to do Jane's Edition.
I'm super stoked to actually get into a different world of podcasting. I've always been in the movie, sci-fi kind of genre, and Ricky and I are getting into our sports category, and I'm extremely stoked to have it. We have another good friend of mine, Jasmine, is going to be on the show with us, so we're going to have really good points of view for when it comes to hockey, and it's going to be different. We're not going to be those normal sportscasters because we're nerds. So there's going to be a good, fun twist on a Colorado Avalanche podcast. So definitely look out for that. The Twitter should be coming out here in the next week down the mountain. I will definitely promote it on the Quest Me Twitter. That being said, we're going to get the F out of here. So let's do a quick little sign off, and then we're going to play this special closing video that I made for this episode. We're going to start at Steve, go to Phil, go to Justin, go to Jesse. So for Quest Me, I have been your host.
Hashtag Freddie Prinze was right.
I'm Phil.
Justin.
I'm Jesse at Open Pike.
And of course, my name is Josh. We will talk to you very soon. May the Force be with you.